We're ready to start.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. This is Lori Charlton. It's January 7th, 2025. Happy New Year and welcome to the regular meeting of the board. I'll call the meeting to order and ask that we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To the members of the public who've dialed in or joined us via Zoom tonight, please know you are muted and will not be heard by the board members, and there will be no live public comment until called for during the meeting. We welcome public comments, typically on voting items, and I will open up for comment before the board begins deliberation on our one voting item tonight, which is item 3. If you are on Zoom, you can indicate now or at any time prior to public comment via the chat function that you'd like to be voted. Please plan to limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Members of the public are always encouraged to send their comments and questions to the board in writing, and you can do so via the town website by navigating to the Board of Finance page and clicking on Contact the Board. Before we jump into tonight's agenda, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Tom Harris, who joined the town as Chief Fiscal Officer effective yesterday. Welcome, Tom. We're really pleased to have you on board. We look forward to working with you. And I want to give you a quick opportunity to introduce yourself, but before you do that, I want to take this opportunity to thank David Becker for his service as interim CFO. David did a lot more than just fill in and keep things afloat this past year. In my opinion, he substantially elevated the role and the performance of the CFO office and helped drive some critical improvements, particularly around capital planning, management, and analysis. He's brought an incredible level of energy and dedication to the job, has been very responsive to everything this board would ask for, and has been working an ungodly number of hours on behalf of the town. So David, I want to thank you again for everything you've done as CFO. Thank you in advance for helping Tom transition. And I'm sure you'll be grateful to be able to focus your energy on your operational responsibilities going forward.
Say one.
Ken?
So thank you, David, for everything. I just want to share a story. 3 weeks ago, I had dinner with my wife. So let's go look at the Christmas tree. You know, I drive by, it's not lit. I text him, and about 20 minutes later, the tree was lit. So that's the little things, but that's important stuff. So thank you, David. Thanks for what you've done the last year.
Not too downward, but thank you.
I apologize for bothering you on a Saturday night.
Never bother, and no matter what.
I figured if the tree wasn't lit during the holiday season, people would. So, there you go.
For the record, it wasn't lit tonight either.
Well,
I'm teasing.
another side story, then I'll be quiet. When I was a kid, I knew where the switch was for the tree, and so I was a little bit of a pain in the neck. I used to turn it on and off all the time. So
Some people do know.
a long time ago. Thank you. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, David. Tom, do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I have 2 full days under my belt, and I'm happy to be on board with Bill as a member of the team. And I look forward to working with everyone and contributing to the growth and progress that we have ahead of us. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we will move on to item 3 in the agenda. Whereas the town of Fairfield has been awarded a grant in the amount of $280,350 by the state of Connecticut DEEP. And whereas the grant requires funds and in-kind services from the town in the amount of $186,900 for the water quality, climate resiliency improvements in the roof watershed project. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen is authorized to make, execute, and approve on behalf of the town of Fairfield contracts or amendments thereof to secure said grant and to expend all grant funds and the town funds and in-kind services as required by the grant for the purposes set forth in the grant. Can I have a motion to hear this item? Mr. Curley, seconded by Ms. Breeder. The backup for this item is posted online, beginning on page 1 of the published materials. And we have Bill Hurley here to present this item. Welcome, Bill. Good to see you.
Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year. Sure. The town of Fairfield applied for and was awarded a grant administered by the Connecticut DEP named the Clean Water Act Section 319 grant. This grant involves water quality and climate resiliency improvements to the Rooster River watershed. The goal is to reduce non-point source pollution in the Algonquin Villa Avenue neighborhood near the recently purchased property at 150 Villa Avenue. The town was one of the few municipalities be selected for this very competitive grant in the state, in which the state awarded a total of $1 million and we got $280,350. So over 25% of the state budget was allotted to Fairfield for this program. The side benefit is stormwater quality. Basins can also act as small neighborhood detention basin as well. Grant covers a portion of the proposed project, which has been presented and listed on the capital projects list waterfall chart and has received approval from town boards as part of the Rooster River projects. The project area recently acquired at 150 Villa Avenue and 191 Algonquin Road. That's the project area. And the grant award was dictated on how much the town receives. As mentioned before, it was $200,350. There is a town share of $186,900 for additional funding. It could also include in-kind services of the town. The costs are considered accurate based on contract bids. However, a few details may have to be addressed, separating some eligible portions of the project and pending a final grant review. This project could potentially involve 3 grants. As stated previously, the project costs for the whole grant are $467,250. State grant reimburses $280,000, and the town share was $186,900. It includes some of those in-kind services. Remaining funds will come from Rooster River bond money or a portion of the Urban Act grant, which was the second grant of the 3 that were eligible. I think the key point of all this is that this project developed conceptual plans and final plans been listed on the waterfall chart. It has been scheduled and programmed for construction. Getting the grant reduces some of the project costs to the town. And the only true additional cost is a requirement is the water quality monitoring that's required by the grant, and it's estimated around $10,000. So this is a project we were going to do anyway. We applied for the 319 section grant money, and we were awarded with it, and we want to start construction as soon as possible. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Questions from the board?
Thank you for that. That was a great summary. I apologize if it's in the back. I just didn't see it, but you mentioned this was on the capital plan waterfall. What was the dollar amount for the project?
That's part of the whole, the $2.5 million bond money of the Rooster River. It was related to ARPA and then was transferred over sometime around the summer, I think.
Just a portion of what?
Yeah, that's a portion of that, right.
That's fine. Thank you.
And then I know it was before the board. It will probably come back maybe next month. There was a section of trail that could also be added to this grant, and a similar situation where most of that grant money would be applied for the project. And there is a town share in that as well. And I know the board had asked for additional information. So for that 3rd grant, we'll tackle that probably next month. Tim Bishop is leading that one.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Walsh.
Can you explain to me, you said some of this money was put aside last summer? Is that what you said?
Well, that was part of the ARPA, and because this Rooster River also involves those detention ponds that we're ever so close to getting the our U.S. Army Corps of Engineer approval for that is all part of the Rooster River project.
When did we get this grant?
This grant, we got this grant, I'm going to say in October.
Time last summer, we put money aside for the project. Now we're getting an expected grant, right? So what money is gonna be reduced? And where's that gonna be reduced?
Well, it's basically, it's gonna really come from a future fund. As you know, the Rooster River, that 2.5 million, not gonna cover the entire. We have 2 or 3 phases of the Rooster River project. And so that will reduce either this section or a future section of funding. It is real savings to the town, as I said before, because if we didn't get the grant, this money would be expended anyway as part of this Rooster River project.
Did we appropriate money last summer?
I will refer to David. I believe, as I said, it's part of that 2 point.
We also cleaned up the different accounts, but to Bill's point, that still only probably roughly half, that was to continue, be able to continue, be able to accept some grant money at the time, address ARPA money, and then also, continue the project forward. But that was roughly half of where we, I want to say it was around 6 or 7 million.
Yeah, there's different ones. Again, depending on how far we go, we were looking at sediment.
If this reduces that amount, I mean, so be it, but you're coming back for that in one form or another anyways.
For phase one?
We've been trying to some extent, pull that. It was on phases because they phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, but then you were doing phase, as an example, you were doing things in phase 2 before you even started parts of phase 1. In reality, this is a large project. And some of these things are being chunked out as they either, as they get permitting that allows you to be able to do that, and Bill can speak to those detail, but there's things that were forecast to occur, that were able to be done at a particular time, and you did some retention ponds, and so those were moved up.
And also included, although not specifically for this project, but the Rooster River, the Bridgeport. And they are contributing to the detention ponds as part of that as well.
Well, we appropriated how much money? No problem. And I just want to be clear, I'm not saying that I don't believe that there are many millions and tens of millions of dollars to be put for a project. But this board has to appropriate the money of what we're doing. If it's gonna reduce that appropriation, I don't care that it might be another $30 million. We have to look at that project and those future projects as they come up and appropriate money for those. So I want to know, if the money we appropriated, does this reduce the amount that we had appropriated? And I love that you got the grant. I want to.
No, yeah. I mean, as David's looking, what I can tell you from my memory is we have a $2.5 million grant, State Urban Act grant. We had $750,000 from the city of Bridgeport, and we had the 2.5 ARPA, but because there was the time limit on that, which was transferred into bond money. So I know 2.5 plus 750 plus 2.5 is what we have already allotted. I guess what we might call section or phase one.
$6 million.
That,
So it is laid out.
Mhm.
And you believe we've appropriated it all?
As far as I know, but I want to have David confirm.
So just, we were clear when we came back, it was 5.75, 0.5 of which was tied to a grant at the time. And also the 750 from Bridgeport. And one of the things that we did was we had multiple appropriations, including some money moving into ARPA, and we collapsed that into one authorization, of which the amount that wasn't from the grant or the Bridgeport allocation at that time was then going to go and was our interpretation has been that so one, on the waterfall, in a moment I can get you that number as well, but on the waterfall, we do have additional funds that are forecasted to be spent to complete this. And we were very clear at the time of the 5.75 that was largely to address the ARPA concerns. If everybody goes back to the spring, there was a concern about taking the money out of ARPA and whether it was gonna ultimately still happen. We wanted to ensure that that community was very clear that the funds were still appropriated for the project. So we didn't come in. We also don't have final dollars, you know, to come in and say, okay, well, it's a $12 million project exactly, right? So what we were mostly trying to do at that time was replace the ARPA dollars. And then the appropriation was a little bit larger than that based upon best available, they would just continue with some of that early work that they were in the process of doing. So again, this is another grant of many grants that have been brought towards this overall Rooster project. But it is much bigger than the 5.75 or 5.75 plus even this. So if the board, interpret it as reducing by this amount, we're coming right back to continue the.
And if I may, I believe the Army Corps says that we should have a decision by mid-January is what they said. And so from there, we would probably put out the detention pond, detention basins at Tungus Hill and Fairchild Wheeler out to bid probably sometime in late January or February. We put it out to bid. And then so when we receive those bids, we'll have a lot better idea of where we stand.
The waterfall has 6.25 million in it for phase 2 as well, which hasn't been approved yet.
What is the waterfall for phase 1?
5.75 taken down by 2.5 and
750,000. That is the first part. And then the rest is supposed to be bonded. So this is just going to be reducing the amount that needs to be bonded, assuming the numbers come in that you estimated that come in at.
That's correct. We honestly don't know until we.
And how long ago did you form that estimate?
Well, we updated the estimate as best as we could. I think it was early last year, probably around that same April time.
So really, this is the 2 detention ponds and the work that needs to go into it. The 5.75.
Oh, for that, yeah, for the grant, it's a smaller, right? Okay, this one.
It's smaller, but
Right.
and the work that the grant was approved for was always part of the 5.75.
For this one, yes, that was, yep. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. Other questions from the board? Okay, do we have any public comment on this item? See anyone? All right. So we can move to a vote then. All in favor of approving the acceptance of the grant set forth in item 3 of the agenda, please raise your hand. Okay, and it is unanimous, 9-0. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. All right, so we'll move to item 4, to hear a presentation on economic development from Community and Economic Development Director. So there's no.
Yeah, I'm coming up.
There is no published backup for this item, but there is a presentation on the screen. And I just as a reminder for the board and maybe as background for a couple of our newer board members, we asked Mr. Barnhart the past couple of years to come in and give this board an update, mainly because when he came in for to do his budget presentation, there was nothing much to talk about in his budget, which was always pretty flat, but everyone was very curious about all the other things that were going on. So to try and take all that conversation out of the budget, we started this process a couple of years ago of asking Mark to provide this update to the board, and we really appreciate you doing this and making yourself available to be here. So
Absolutely, good practice. Omar, will this be made part of our backup? Yeah, I'll send out.
Yes. We will get it posted. This wasn't posted in advance, but yes, it will get posted on the backup, and I will make a note to remind Jen of that. So
Send you the slides.
thanks again, Mark. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for having me this evening. Mark Barnhart, Director of Community Economic Development. Just a little bit about the office. I'm sure most of you are familiar with what it is we do, but we have a small office, so 3.5 full-time staff, about $370,000 budget, which represents, I think, 0.1% of the overall budget. We handle federal grant on behalf of the town, community development block grant. So there's some federal grant fiduciary responsibilities associated with that and administer programs in connection with that grant. On the economic development front, which is what I oversee, looking primarily to assist our existing business base, to put them in a position to prosper, grow, and succeed here. Trying to eliminate any barriers or frictions they may have with local government or others levels of government, and connect them with resources and enable them to prosper. In addition, we're always on the lookout, obviously, to attract investment to the area to help grow our brand list. But I would say the majority of our focus is obviously on keeping the existing business base in a position to continue to grow. I think I covered this a little bit last year, but I think everyone in this room shares with me the belief Fairfield is a great place to live, work, play, raise a family, start a business, operate a business. But it's a very competitive marketplace, both in terms of putting in place the conditions to attract talent as well as investment. And so we thought it would be helpful to have a positioning statement that defines what sets us apart in that marketplace. I think you can see here, obviously focused on the fact that one of our strengths is that we have a very highly educated and productive workforce. Many folks here have advanced degrees. That talent certainly is helpful, but we also are home to 2 outstanding private universities. That's fairly unique for a community our size. Those universities are significant employers in their own right. They also do much to enrich the cultural vitality of not just the town, but the region. They also give businesses access to that rising talent. And a lot of those folks that are educated here come back as alums and live in the area. So again, I think that speaks well to the town and hopefully continues to serve as well. I think last year when we were meeting, I had a slide with our Federal Reserve Chairman. We obviously don't exist in a vacuum here. They're subject to the larger macroeconomic forces that are in play, both statewide as well as nationally, globally. But when we were talking last year, we were out of the post-pandemic, some of the issues that we've faced through that global pandemic in terms of very tight labor market, rising costs. Obviously, we're still dealing with those inflationary pressures, and the Fed had hiked interest rates to combat inflation. And that obviously had a chilling effect in terms of some of the economic development. Some projects that were maybe borderline, people got used to free money when the borrowing rate was very low, maybe are not so viable in this current environment with cost, not only cost higher, but borrowing rates higher. So now the question is really, as the Fed begins to loosen up and provide lower interest rate borrowings, how quickly, how fast, and what effect that will have in terms of economic development activity here locally. From a labor, these are always lagging indicators, but when we're looking at the labor market, we have a workforce of about 30,000 folks here. But unemployment remains both nationally as well as the state and certainly locally at or near historic lows. This is what kind of full employment looks like. We always typically are lower than the region, the state, and the country in terms of our unemployment rate. Looking at our vacancy rate, office, I've done this analysis for a number of years now. We have a fairly small submarket compared to others, but consistently we have a very low vacancy rate. What we have seen as a region, positive net absorption. So we've seen vacancy rates go down, particularly in the Stanford Central Business District. That's very helpful, obviously. It's partly as a result of increased leasing activity, but also the inventory has been reduced. Some of those office buildings that perhaps are not functionally obsolete have been converted to other uses, including residential. We've seen a little bit of that here locally, but not much. But certainly Trumbull, there was a significant reduction back in 2019. That was a direct result of reduction. So it's pretty much unchanged from year to year. Sorry, Jim.
Would you prefer questions be asked after?
Yeah, if you have something on the slide, sure.
Yeah, I was on that slide.
Yeah.
How do you get the numbers on our vacancy rates? Is it based on a square footage basis?
This is Cushman.
The total amount of square footage in the town of office space?
So this is Cushman and Wakefield. This is looking at Class A, Class B of office use. I do calculate office as well as retail vacancy and do that calculation. So I get from the assessor's office a list of an inventory of industrial buildings, office buildings, as well as retail uses. Compare what our current vacancy in terms of what's available to lease in terms of that. And my calculations roughly align with
Okay, so do you have slides, or are you going to be presenting evidence tonight on what like the retail vacancy?
I can tell you that.
But I don't know if you have it down to hospitality. If you have it, you have.
Yeah, I don't have slides, but I can tell you the retail vacancy as of last quarter was 8%. Office vacancy across all classes, including Class C, was about 11%. So again, we've got some folks that are own their property. They Bigelow Tea, for example. So that's always used, and in terms of our inventory reduction and the significant reduction in our own. So, but that's roughly where we're at. And it has stayed roughly about the same in the low teens.
I've never seen such granular data from them. Do you buy this?
I don't actually. It's again a little lagging because I'm looking at third quarter here. But I've done third quarter each year.
And you can back into their estimate. Okay.
Well, they actually provide that. And that again is consistent with the information I have directly from the assessor's office. I'm sure this is of interest to all of you. Commercial building activity. This does include institutional. It has stayed roughly around the same. Ebbed and flowed over the years. We had a couple of very robust years coming out of the pandemic with 2021 and 2022, although some of that was related to some of the improvements at Fairfield University and Sacred Heart University, where we get building permit fees, but that doesn't reflect in the commercial grand list. We do expect that to pick up a little bit with interest rate coming down. This is an indication of some of the more significant permit activity. Eds, what we call eds, meds, and beds, long dominated our list most recently, although it's a little bit more diverse this past year in terms of seeing other uses. We obviously have the medical office renovations and fit up, and some work at both Fairfield and Sacred Heart University in terms of fit center remodel, and new apartments coming online or starting construction. But we also have auto dealerships, seen a resurgence in terms of interest there, in terms of investing in Commerce Drive and elsewhere in terms of new auto dealerships or expansion of those uses.
Yeah, just a quick question.
Yeah.
If you back up to the last slide with the graph. So last year, our grand list growth was fairly modest,
Modest, yeah.
to put it kindly. And and driven, I assume, by the factors you talked about, borrowing costs, et cetera. And so it doesn't look like this year.
I don't
Any
think,
better.
we're not gonna see, again, to move the grand list in a significant amount because it's a
Yeah.
pretty sizable number would, 1%, for example, would require a new investment of $170 million here. So, and I know folks here are very familiar with the fact that really when we talk about grand list growth, we're talking about new construction, building additions, things that add, real estate, the personal property and motor vehicles, they're a small component of our overall grand list personal property. So even the vacancy rate, when we talk about moving in new tenants, doesn't really materially affect our commercial grand list unless they're bringing a boatload of personal property.
So we should be expecting a fraction of a percent again. Is that?
Yeah.
I gotta go through recent estimate. Yeah, most recent estimate net is 0.25%.
Thank you.
So some of the development activity that was underway last year that we reviewed, I just wanted to give a quick update. On the top left and right, we had a new one-story veterinary hospital, Dr. Marsh, up in the Greenfield Hill, which was completed this past year. The center pictures are the new 100-unit apartment building off Park Avenue, 5545 Park Avenue, next to Sacred Heart, across from Merritt Parkway, which interestingly, and this allowed us to achieve enough points to apply for our initial moratorium. So this is the project that put us over.
That was the one that put us over.
That was the one that put us over with room to spare, thankfully. So we've asked, as part of our application, reserved those excess points for the subsequent moratorium application. And then the lower picture is the former plant factory site, which is a new 25,000 square foot medical office building, paired with its partnership between Hartford Healthcare and Sloan Memorial Kettering Cancer Treatments. So some of the stuff that's current, all that was completed this past year. Some of the new projects and projects that are currently underway that we expect to be completed in 2025. The upper pictures are the first initial phase of the long awaited crossings at Fairfield Metro, or whatever we're calling the project now that we've renamed the station. That's building number 4. It's a 70-unit apartment building. First building, which we expect to be completed this year. Lower left is a 3-story mixed-use building. It's a home of me and law offices on Sherman Street downtown, and then 251 Commerce Drive is the lower right, which is the new home of Jangris Auto Group, Chrysler Dodge Jeep dealerships. They're renovating the old Gaze and Scap building there and building an addition. Not much to look at right now.
Why did they keep the building?
Well, I think they could reuse the shell. So they're largely using much of what's there. They do have an addition.
Yeah, I've seen it.
But it's again not much to look at.
No.
Again, I think I covered this. I think it's instructive because about only 4.5% of our land mass is zoned for commercial uses, primarily along the Post Road and then running up the axes on Black Rock Turnpike. But it's highly productive and accounts for about 12% of our grand list. I think this was also instructive. I mean, with land being finite and limited resource and obviously quite valuable in terms of what the going rate for land is now, upwards of $2 million an acre places. It's important that we look at, what these projects might yield on a per acre basis. So, some of the more recent apartment buildings, mixed use developments, amenity rich that have been built in the last few years, contribute pretty sizably to our grand list. And on a taxes per unit basis, I think this was an eye-popping, eye-opening number. There's across the board in terms of multifamily and 10 or more units, it doesn't really generate many kids and school-age children. We do find a sizable percentage of the folks that live in some of these newer apartment buildings are actually empty nesters, looking to downsize and have a more simpler, carefree lifestyle. So a significant component of that are folks my age or on to the good stuff. I guess we've got a couple sites that we've previewed before. This is the former Exide battery site at 2190 Post Road. It's a little over 6 acres. It's still zoned industrial. There have been conversations about extending the center design business district to encompass this site. And that was part of the recommendations in the draft plan of conservation development. We did have an application by the Penske Auto Group to locate a new Porsche auto dealership showroom and service facility on that site. 100% consistent with our existing regulations. Planning and Zoning Commission denied the application on a narrow 4-3 vote. It's on appeal. If I had to venture a guess, I don't know that we have. I'm not an attorney, so maybe I shouldn't venture a guess, but I don't know that we have as much. There is a lot of discussion about whether that was the right. So I do anticipate that this likely will. I understand where the folks on the commission were coming from. And again, this, I think to me, this underscores the need to update our master plan because that's really a guiding document to help us inform where that investment should take place and what kind of investment it looks like. So this is on appeal. I do expect it to get resolved, and my guess is that we'll probably see some kind of auto dealership on that site in the near future.
Do you have any estimate of what that facility as
Will
drawn there
generate?
would be worth?
It's a pretty good sized building. I mean, again, to the point that I raised earlier with the other slide, it's a big site, 6 acre site. So when the owners of the property came to talk to both myself and other members of staff, and former First Select people and commissioners and the like, I think we all envision a more intensive use, which would yield even more dollars, as well as also benefit the ownership's bottom line. Does come with, obviously, anytime that area of the Post Road, we know certain times of the day is difficult to traverse. So, a more intensive development does come with some negative effects as well, which is, the point made by the Penske Auto Group folks that is a very low intensity use. It's gonna be a nice boost, but it's a 1-story building. It's a good size building. It takes up a large piece of the site, but at the end of the day, it's a 1-story building surrounded by an asphalt park.
I mean, car dealers in general are not particularly.
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna be a Gen 5. It's gonna have all the bells and whistles, so I'm sure it's gonna be on the higher end of that estimate, but I don't have the numbers with me, but when we looked at it, it's gonna boost the grand list, but it's not, as much.
So that property is adjacent to the railroad tracks. How much of an influence on potential use has the UI monopole project had? Like, has that scared other developers away from proposing other projects?
Certainly, the ownership has made that case, and I'm sure it has some effect. I do think that ultimately we could envision other uses there that might produce a bigger tax benefit to the town. And I'm not sure, multi-story, and I don't know that. I still get calls from folks looking to do different types of uses on that site. That's not top of mind. So I think they see it as a very, and it is, it's a really key site. Say a gateway into the community,
Yeah.
high visibility. You know, Penske has been a solid corporate citizen. I'm sure this will be an absolutely gorgeous dealership there, and be proud of it, but at the same time, I see missed opportunities here too.
Is this what you anticipated with this entire weight on the Exide property? That we get to. So I'll tell you, it's the exact opposite of what I ever did. I mean,
No, if you had asked
this
me,
is like a huge disappointment.
be honest, if you had asked me what I envisioned for that site at the end of the remediation, a remediation that cleaned up the site to residential standards without any environmental land use restrictions on site. So you can literally do anything on that site and not have any issues from an environmental standpoint. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a missed opportunity. Again, I'm not the owner of it. I understand his rationale and thinking. This is a guaranteed income stream for the period of his lease. And you can't get a better credit than Penske Auto. So I get where he's coming from. This is kind of the frustrating part when we have a limitation of what it is we can do when we don't actually control the site. Now, I could suggest that we moved a little bit quicker in terms of looking at our land use regulations with respect to the site. Maybe it'd be a different conversation, but at the same time,
Is it too
I
late?
know that the commission was concerned about, and again, the commission was concerned about changing the use from an industrial and opening the door potentially to a set aside development rate. Because industrially zoned properties typically are not vulnerable to set aside application. So I think they kept it that way. But again, this whole protracted process of looking at our plan of conservation development, you know, again, we want to be thoughtful. We want to obviously get people's input and make sure that this is going to be the guiding document for the next 10 plus years. But it's taken a long time to get to this point. So that to me is exhibit A as to why you want to have a master plan in place, because to help guide that investment decision in a way that's reflective of what the community wants to see at this site. You know, it's industrial zone, so an automotive use is perfectly permitted.
I know, I understand. I think it probably should have been either pocket zoned, or there's people talking about making it a village district. Sorts of controls on it that way, and it probably should have been. It's the only major vacant area of town that was still.
When you look at, 6 acre site.
It's the opportunity to have done that because they have their plan filed and. So, just, how many dealerships do we have in town?
Well, they're predominantly over in Commerce Drive area, but there's a good number.
It's highway too.
Yeah, well, we're gonna see a few, there's some things highway as well.
I would suggest that we almost have more dealerships than any other town.
Well,
Fairfield County.
Milford probably
Maybe
got us beat.
that's not Fairfield County. That's
So,
maybe a part of.
I mean, in the Commerce Drive area, planning and zoning rightfully views that as kind of a transitional use.
I think it's a great area.
And
Now spreading though like a cancer town.
it goes in, you know, where there was a period of time where we were fixated on, you know, banks and taking up retail space in downtown. And oh my God, we need to have a regulation to prohibit banks from occupying prime retail space. And it goes in cycles. I do anticipate, you know, who knows what the future may hold in terms of auto ownership. I think it's the town's been around for 375 years. At some point, this property will have another crack at it.
Yeah, there's a thought process out there in the automotive industry I've read about. But there will not be dealerships in the future. You will buy electric cars they will be delivered to your house.
And you're gonna probably pay
No
us,
maintenance area.
it's gonna be probably a monthly membership.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
So if that happens.
It's already happening.
It's already happening.
Yeah, but
People have all these vacant properties.
Well, but that opens up an opportunity for other things. So I think there's always gonna be this opportunity for regeneration and change, and that's not a bad thing. So, again, nothing, Penske Auto Group, they've been a solid corporate citizen. They've done, they maintain their properties well. They pay a significant amount of taxes here. Just again, to your point, Jim, I think there was an opportunity to do something. But it's hard, I can't really blame them. Again, 'cause it's private property. It's private property. And it was zoned exactly for this. This is consistent with their zone. Again, we're seeing the first building under construction. It is approved for roughly 360 units with a hotel. The hotel is in the inner part of the curve there, curvature of the road. There have been conversations, and actually did a concept review with planning and zoning to look at reconfiguring, because honestly, if you look at the approved site plan, it was a bunch of buildings with parking lots. So not exactly what I think all of us envisioned for a TOD development with access to train like this. And again, making the most use of this site. So we've encouraged them to think differently about it. We understand this is going to be a phased development that will take place in a period of 10 years. It's already been 20 years since we've done the project, in terms of initial three-party agreement, and the station itself was opened in 2011. So, there's a larger multi-phase complicated development projects. We've had some issues here in terms of ownership on the site. We continue to have some issues with ownership on the site, but we're working through it. So at least we're seeing the first building come up, and again, plans for subsequent revised site plan.
Just hard to see on the slide there, but I see 6 brown boxes in the upper picture. Can you just walk through what those 6?
Yeah, so I'll send out a bigger picture. Hopefully you can see it. So it was acreage. This site, if you look at it, it's roughly a 30-acre site, but it's broken into thirds. So you have about a third that is the train station parking lot. And then there's a whole conversation again with land being what it is, whether it's a big asphalt parking lot's the best use of that site. That's for another day. We have about 10 acres that is along the Ash Creek and to the west of the property, which is the conservation easement area. And then we have 10 acres, which is essentially development. And part of that 10 acres, the parking lot is about an acre that's available under ground lease with air rights for the hotel. So you have a little bit about 12 acres.
Right, thanks.
Have there been ownership changes recently?
The only change recently has been that the folks providing the financing have taken a more front-facing role.
That sounds like foreclosure, but that's not what you mean.
Well, it's not completed because they're not foreclosed out. So Accurate now is more the minority partner. Majority partner is the AMSAC Capital.
Which was the lender.
Which was.
That's why that building's taking so long.
If you watched the progress in this building, and there was about 6 months where it was stopped.
Yeah, I thought so.
And they haven't, even before then, they weren't going gangbusters.
It's been in the news. Heard anything about it?
Well, don't try to inherit too many dirty ones.
Yeah.
This is another site that we've been actively following. I think we're right there at the cusp now. So it is approved for a 245 unit mixed use development with retail, office. Has structured parking, public amenity space. This is Post Road Residential, which also developed the Anchorage. They've done a lot of projects of this kind primarily in the Boston metro area, but also in New Haven and other parts of Connecticut. They're a boutique merchant developer, and so they're very selective, but they all live locally. So, you know, what they do is top quality. And this will be a great project. It's under contract. They need to have all their, the way they've structured the purchase and sale agreement is that it's triggered once they have all their entitlements in place. All the local approvals have been granted. They're still waiting for their state traffic commission approval. Frankly, there's a little bit of a timing issue here. I'm sure that they've been watching where borrowing rates are going and trying to time this in such a way to lower their development cost. But they're anticipating closing on the property first quarter this year and being on construction later this year. So that this will be about a 18 to 20. Yeah, very nice addition to our grant list.
Is it an apartment building or is this condos or town?
It will be an apartment building. And it is a brownfield site. We did secure a $3 million brownfield grant that we intended to use as a pass through to help defray the cost of cleanup. The thought was that might allow the developer also to boost the number of affordable units. He's approved at 12%. At the time, we were really focused on, again, accumulating as many points as possible for our moratorium. That's no longer as much of a motivation for us. And the $3 million, as you anticipate, with state brownfield dollars, came with some significant strings, which we uncovered as we went through the due diligence process, part of which was you need to pay prevailing wage on the entire vertical development of the project. So this is a $125 million project. At the time, we thought, if you're getting $3 million and you only have to pay prevailing wage to clean up the site, which is roughly $5 to $6 million, that makes sense. Take $3 million to increase your labor cost by 30% on a $125 million project doesn't make sense. So I think we're gonna probably go back to the state and say thanks.
This will border where Illicit is.
This is right next to Illicit, yeah. Yeah, they're very anxious.
I'm sure there won't be any noise complaints there.
Well, but
You know what they're
you gotta know what you're getting into. You're next to a train station too, but I understand where you're coming from because we hear those.
Is there any, you're talking in a couple of these about these gigantic parking lots, flooding issues, concerns, putting down all this impervious surf, like, is that?
No, this actually is higher up, but it also will actually improve stormwater quality site because there isn't any mechanisms in place. So it is a very intense.
I was thinking of the portion
yeah.
of ownership too, but like just in general, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that they've
All the water has to be kept on site.
they've incorporated all the.
I mean, I remember hearing how like the Trumbull Mall parking lot is, affects us here in Fairfield because of all the.
Yeah, everything runs off and it goes into a storm drain system that has to flow down eventually to here, so.
If the promo mall had been done today, or if they do a major renovation, like they talked about the housing, in theory, they're supposed to address all these issues, because yes, the Trumbull Mall literally ends up down here.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have a whole lot to report here. This is former Handy and Harmon site. We've had conversations with the folks who do own it. It's about a 9.5 acre site. It is under consent order. They continue to do work in accordance with that consent order, doing the ecological risk assessment, developing environmental remediation plan for the site. Unfortunately, we had gotten a lot of inquiries. Again, the uses that were envisioned for the site were a low intensity retail use, self-storage, which frankly isn't a horrible location for self-storage, but not a major. And part of their calculation is trying to recoup some of their cost to clean it up. So again, none of these things are really probably making a lot of sense to them from a sales standpoint, unless they can just transfer that liability off their balance sheet. this is a publicly traded company, so I think part of it is, I've speculated before, I think part of the why they might not be as eager to complete their risk assessment and environmental remediations. So at that point, then they have a known liability in terms of what the cleanup costs would be. The state, you know, it's just one of many brownfield sites like this, and we're constantly agitating them to take the next step. So this, it really is 9.5 acres, but nominally, you know, functionally, you have about 2 to 3 that you can develop on the site. It's most of it's wetlands. And then I know there's been a lot of conversation about the Circle Inn. This is a proposal. There was a concept review before the Planning and Zoning Commission this past, you know, late fall this past year, and the concept was very favorably received. It's a six acre site. If you take out the tidal wetlands, it's about 8 acres overall. It's zoned for DRD. As you know, it's improved with a hotel, but they've done some renovations to it, but it's a tired asset. It's functionally obsolete at this point. What they're proposing is to scrape the site and develop a almost 300,000 square foot development with a larger boutique hotel, 250 apartments. They've projected their investment at about $90 million. That sounds about right to me. And that $1.5 million net taxes is probably conservative invested. So, you know, it has the potential to be transformative to this area of Post Road. I think the architecture is stunning. You know, there are obviously concerns about impact to traffic and the like that'll have to be worked out through the land use approval process, which will likely be a public hearing sometime in the next 60 days, some March timeframe. They do have a plan B, as you can imagine. They filed concurrently, as did the project on 2179 Road. They have a plan A, plan B. Plan A is more consistent with the direction in which our plan of conservation development is going in terms of encouraging this type of use. Plan B is a more traditional set aside development under 830G. Yes, until the state approves our application, we're still filed.
And that's under a comment period now?
The clock is ticking. They've accepted it. They've advised us their application is complete. They have 90 days. So 90 days puts us into March and towards the end of March. And until the end of March, you know, and we're seeing planning and zoning is now meeting weekly, perpetual session, because they've been inundated with applications, people trying to beat the clock. Some, you know, are sites that could allow for, you know, I much prefer this type of use than a larger, entirely 100% residential project. But there's others that just they throw them together, slapdash.
So they're pushing for plan A, but plan B is their backup. And plan B is.
They just want to reserve their rights. Right. That's.
What is going on? I don't know if you can answer this question. I remember 4 or 5 years ago. What's going on with the circle over there? I thought the state was coming in to redo the whole thing. Is that still?
Long process, but I think the one thing I can see definitely with a major development plan for that area, it would put additional pressure. I think would make it easier to find the additional dollars to invest to make that happen. So hasten those roadway improvements. There's actually Bill's left, but it's 3 phases. It's running from the Bridgeport line down through the circle. And so the projects that closest to being under construction is the area closest to the Bridgeport line, the Grassmere. But then there's a second phase that's closest to this project. And we've actually coordinated our engineer with theirs to make sure that our driveways align, their driveway aligns with our. And that's in final design. And then the peanut or the roundabout area is still in concept design. The state's kind of taken ownership of that. We did get some dollars earmarked from the federal government for that purpose. But I do think that side benefit for an investment like this, it will definitely hasten those roadways. So, for the state.
Because does that have to, like a better term, the roadway situation be resolved before that project can go forward, or not necessarily?
Well, so this project will likely be what they consider a threshold or major traffic generator, so they'll have to go to the state traffic commission for approval.
So what do you use? Making that assessment, do you use the anticipated road changes there, or what's currently in place when making that assessment?
Well, I think much of what you're seeing and much of what they'll reflect in their analysis is existing traffic. And it's a major diversion for I-95. And in fact, part of the intent here is to make it less so. So it's more directed towards local traffic as opposed to folks trying to get around the block on I-95. So they'll have to provide a full traffic analysis report, internal circulation study to the Planning and Zoning Commission, first level review. But what they're, most of the impacts that they envision are onto their site. It's really people trying to exit their site and get out on the roadway. So as long as they have sufficient stacking capacity internally, I don't know that it would have much impact on our local.
The Beach Road,
Yes.
where does that stand?
So that's under.
I mean, I know it's under construction,
I'll
but
take a picture, but there's not much to look at either.
Yeah.
It's a hole in their wall,
I
a hole in
walk
their.
by there almost every day at it. But wasn't sure the timing.
They are moving, so they pulled a building permit just before the new year. They're forming foundations. Again, typically when you get in the ground, it's something like that. It's 40 units. I would say it's a 12 to 18 month build. So we're anticipating it'll be completed, looking for a CO sometime in 2026.
And what's the tax impact of something like that?
Well, again, most of these residential projects, the easy way to look at it, most of the ones I've looked at are yielding between $5,000 and $8,000 per unit in taxes. So low end, $5,000 towards units. I think it'll probably be better.
Thank you.
There's another one that was on that list too, the 90 units on Bronson Road, which you can see from the highway. But again, they just have a podium right now and a couple elevator shafts. We expect that to take a little bit longer. It's a bigger project, probably not finish until late 2026.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Jim?
Who's our largest employer? It was GE for a long time.
Well, outside of the town board of ed, then it would go to it's the two universities.
Outside of the Board of Ed? How many is the Board of Ed?
I don't know off the top of my head, but
1,000?
yeah,
How many is the university? Do you know each university employees?
they're around 1,000. Yeah, if not more. I can get there.
I think it's more. Yeah, I've been reaching out to both universities because I started thinking who our largest employers are. Saw this come up the other day. And I think it's other from Fairfield University. Would you be surprised their economic impact? And this was a study they had done by the Connecticut Conference of Independent Colleges, whose source information is Connecticut Independent College and University Institute for Research and Public Service. This is an impact study done in 2020. Their total economic impact in their study is on a yearly basis, $1,054,877. Out of that number, total direct spending, and I started thinking about it, like it is true. Total direct spending that the university, 600 out of that number, $630 million. By direct spending, they mean spending by employees, which they estimate to be $104 million. Direct spending by students, $45.8 million to our merchants. Direct spending by visitors, and this includes parents This includes people who come to see the university, don't go there. For people who try to come to get an interview. 11,879,000. University purchases. I'm glad about because obviously they're charging about by the time you're done, $100,000 a year to the students. $79,129,000. And investment spending is 74 million. That's just Fairfield University.
Yeah, Cigar has one as well.
Sacred Heart has one, and I would kind of argue that maybe the spending has been a little bit more in regards to building the investment spending. That number is unbelievable. And, I used to represent a lot of restaurants in town, many of which were frequented by all Fairfield students, Fairfield University parents. I mean, you cannot get a reservation during some of the more popular weekends when parents are coming to visit this town.
Yeah.
I'd be hard pressed for some rumors to survive without it. So what about the universities and who else after that?
Then you drop down quite a bit. I mean, Evolution Gaming, Penfield Pavilion Group, these are all employers in the hundreds, several hundred people, but there's a pretty big gap between the two universities, the town, the two universities, and everything. So you drop down to, I think Evolution Gaming now has 300 employees, Penfield Pavilion Group has 100 employees. A place like Bigelow Key has about 125. So, it's a diverse group, but again, the universities are a very significant employer and contribute significantly. I would maybe take a little bit of exception with the numbers because it's a gross. So one of the things, so if you looked at, you're doing what would that area that they encompass now be if it weren't a university that taxes down? What would that economic impact? Would you net that out?
It wouldn't be tax exempt, it would be houses.
Correct. It wouldn't be tax exempt. So, but I think the main point, whether it's 1.2 billion or something else, is that they have a significant impact. I will not argue that. I think the town is much richer for having two universities.
Without a doubt.
The reasons I stated.
No, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that point out. That's very well. You showed a lot of projects tonight online, coming online. The number of apartments is astronomical. Do you have any data to show?
Yeah, I did. I should have brought a slide. I do look at that with the Affordable Housing Committee. There certainly has been a growth in terms of more housing being built. And if you look at, historically, we would net 50 units per year. And now we're closer to somewhere between 100 and 150. So the number of housing units has increased and the type of housing we're building is different. But yet, it's Fairfield has 22,000 housing units. So despite the changes we've seen, 80% of our housing stock continues to be single attached housing. That's the predominant use that's here, and that will not change. But I can show you.
How can that number, all of units, hundreds of units per buildings? You're showing hundreds
over like 10 years. So it seems like a lot if you look at it you step back and look at it over that period of time, and all you see in terms of new applications is, and certainly that's what we're seeing right now. But not all the projects that go through the approval process or even get approved get built.
I'm talking about the ones I see.
I'm talking
about the ones I see, and I know people that live it, like over on Commerce Drive.
Question
Commerce Drive, over by the train
you
station.
can count them up.
Maybe just, if you want, if you can send me.
I'll send you that slide. I'll send it to the board.
Yeah, no, that would be helpful. I do think we need to probably should move on, but,
Sorry to take up.
no,
some-
no, no. On the contrary, I really, I think it's been an incredibly valuable discussion and thank you, making yourself available sort of at the last
No, I
minute.
had to just switch it.
And, yeah, no, we appreciate you being here and,
I'll make sure I put it on my calendar.
all right, but thank you again, Mark.
Ask him a question about it. For a town our size.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it's 0.1% of the budget. You're only 3 people. Really points. Is that large enough? For what we are?
You
I
know,
mean, and how does that compare?
But-
And how does that compare?
But-
March.
We'll talk about that in March.
I do, I think it's a little bit difficult to do an apples to apples comparison, because I would say that here. And, you know, the department does a lot of different things. So now I'm providing staff support to 4 different boards and commissions, right?
Yeah.
The rent of Arts Commission, including economic development, affordable housing. So I do think that we do need additional resources. I think the board, town boards did address that in part last year. And I held them off because I wanted to see how things would go with the Fair Rent Commission, Arts Commission, to see what kind of demands that would come up on top. But it's been tough to manage. So I do think we need probably some additional resources. And that'll be part of the budget.
Your job, you have 2 different areas, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to get.
It's really community development and economic development, right? And you're one department. Right. Correct me if I'm wrong. You give me your percentage. 80% of your job and the people in your you get community development.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that, but no, I have one person that's entirely funded through the grant, and that's what she does. And that's community development. The other ones, you know, whether you call, you know, community promotion, I call marketing and promotion part of economic development, but that's a substantial part of what we do. Which is, you know, not only in terms of reinforcing what the feeling within the marketplace in terms of Fairfield being a great place to invest in and start a business. We want people to feel that, so we do invest in marketing in that regard. But I consider that part of economic development. So the other things that we do are working with our existing business base to support them, help them, you know, be in the best positions.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mark. Thanks everyone for your questions. All right, we'll see you soon.
Page 150 in the Act for has the top employee listed with a 9-year.
That's right. I forgot about that. It does. All right. We're going to move on to some more mundane things. Item 5, to hear an update on the Parks and Recreation revolving fund. And just as a reminder to the board and maybe for our newer members, this is let's get an annual update. Technically, you know, probably before year end and the financial statements are updated. This gives us a window into how much or what the financial activity of the Parks and Rec revolving fund is and how much money is ultimately contributed back to the town's general. So the backup for this item is posted online. It begins on page 5. David, are you going to take us through this? I understand Anthony was not available.
Yeah, scheduling wise for this, gotta keep it on the agenda.
Okay. You'll take us through it?
But he sent me some information, briefed me a little bit today, and so, you know, the transfer for this report already occurred and was disclosed back in October at the quarterly. So it runs from October to September timeframe. Last year, you know, we budgeted, we'd set aside 140,000 as the revenue. You may note, it's we did with the transfer, and the net shown here is that this particular year been pretty across 132,267 into the account, so it's a little bit short. But the short of it is programming related. It runs through this account, so all the revenue and all of the expense And then the account was left with $200,000 in it, so that it always has money to essentially to start up the next year. Not run negative in that initial window. And the 132 was what was swept across as actual final revenue. So that is sort of the highlight summary of the way the account operates, and there are specific
Yeah,
questions.
I'll just open it up for questions on if anybody has questions on program detail, Mr. Mottola.
Not the program. The thing that just strikes me, I don't know if there's anything you can do about it, is the credit card fees are a lot of money. Is there anything that can be done about that? $283,000.
So this is just people, that's just people who pay for camps or whatever via credit card.
Yeah, and that would be.
It is, our understanding on it is that, it's been built into the pricing essentially. I mean, obviously rec pricing and reasonable pricing, you could make the argument to charge above it, but you also could have had lower fees and done that. I mean, they're able to hit the revenue, sort of the revenue goal as budgeted while having that as an expense. It's pretty factored into.
We know that that's gonna be the expense.
Yeah, I mean, if you
Heck
want-
of a lot we can do about
If
it.
you start charging the fees on top of it, which technically the municipality can do, but you're gonna find yourself potentially then pricing differently. So
Processing checks, which is not helpful.
yeah, and I think the main thing to focus on this is the ultimate bottom line, and that's the way that this runs.
Can I ask a question? Is there any, the seasonal brochure, 56,000, have we reevaluated the value of that at any time in recent years? I mean, I know I get one, it sort of shows up, I glance at it and sort of toss it. I don't really use it as a reference material. And I tend to think that a lot of people look online to see what the programs are. It's a decent sized number, just curious.
I would say it's a vital resource.
A vital resource.
Yeah, we love getting.
And it reminds you, you gotta start doing things.
I'm gonna be very active this year, made a lot of resolutions. No, I actually like it, but different perspective. I got kids sign up for a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, so it's,
Asked during the budget, but we can talk.
I mean, we don't really go through this
It's
during the
pretty
budget.
vital in my house as well. Anthony views it as vital.
It's vital.
Sign up.
All right, no,
And
that's
it-
good to know.
Need a.
It's the reminder when you got kids, you get that,
Yeah.
just get it, I know on this date, I gotta go online and sign my kids up for the summer camp.
Yeah.
And it's just like a reminder.
No, that's good perspective. I was just curious. Okay. Other questions?
The question just following
Kelly?
on John's. So is for the credit card fees, is most of the revenue from people paying by credit card?
I don't know the percentage, but that's substantial. So, yeah, the one thing to note on this is that the golf courses they run their own P&L and they're separate from this, but their credit card fees do run through this and not broken out separately. So that is one sort of just anomaly within.
Oh, interesting.
But we don't reallocate. I mean, I guess there's a couple of different schools of thought, but in the ultimately the town and one of the discussions, and I know we brought this up at audit, but one of the discussions is how many things then we start trying to allocate and do transferring.
Did that analysis by the golf commission take account of their credit card?
Seeing it.
Because they pulled in things that were not part of their P&L, like with their capital, their debt service and things like that. So just curious. Okay. Because I mean, you can do that without doing an accounting allocation. I mean, that whole analysis they did was sort of manual. Ms. Ruggiero?
Yeah, where do we see the summer camp?
Um,
Playground. Playground, champs.
The big
Yeah.
number is sort of in the
Action
middle of the
squad.
first page.
it's about halfway
Just
down.
There, it's playground, that's what
Well,
they
well,
classify it as.
that's what they call it. So like Camp Champs, playground, there's playground, there's action squad, and there's adapted. Yeah, so those are the camp-based programs. They label it as playground. Camps and then playground are their two driving.
Maybe label it. It's a point, George to get on.
I went through the list like 3 times and I'm like, am I missing it? Like,
Yeah.
it has to be here.
And I only pick it up because I know like the Camp Champs is like one of their camps, so.
Yeah.
Maybe if it just said summer camp dash camp champs, I don't know, I just
Can
didn't.
ask him about
I
maybe.
was a little bit like, I'm looking at the fellas thinking it has to be that.
We had an email from a resident asking about the miscellaneous fees. Any insight into that?
Yeah, he believes that that's something that he was possibly mislabeled. Checking into that.
Okay.
But to that extent as well, you know, there are things within the program, buying basketballs and things like that. So the word miscellaneous is not necessarily in what is essentially millions of dollars flowing through to have a miscellaneous account. On some of these things and maybe get multiple lines for exactly what it's wrong for. But he's gonna look at that from a perspective, just.
Any other questions? Mr. Walsh?
I don't understand that maybe. Fields, we have actually revenue on the second page. So we have revenue of 27,150. Revenue coming in somehow. For field improvements, I don't think anybody's making donations, but maybe they are. And then we have, I understand the expense for the field improvement, $66,000. So it's a program that has a almost $39,000 loss. So, I don't know what that is. So is that a budgetary thing where we're budgeting 27,150 and giving it to them?
So what the field improvements, so the question was, what was the field improvements that were budgeted for 27 cost 6K was the question. Anthony's answer back to me on that was the resident misunderstanding with the P&L. This line item shows that the department took in 27 for this line and it had expenses of 66K. Field improvements are typically items like field clay, sod, bases, fencing, et cetera. So it's not like a revamp of an entire field.
I get the expenses. I'm not getting the revenue side. Not
Um,
understanding where the.
Question is that a contribution from the town revenue side? Is that your question?
Yeah, I don't know where, I can't think of another, I can't think
No, I
of
understand
another
what you're saying.
revenue side where someone's saying, hey, I want to give you money towards revenue.
the,
Field improvements.
well, the only thing would be the leagues oftentimes.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe that is the
So,
leagues having to contribute a certain amount.
You can get back to us on.
Although it's pretty close to budget, 77.
Yeah, and when you're doing the budget, are you, do you actually do an estimate based on kind of this level of detail? Estimating where this, I mean, do they use this as a mechanism to help?
Well, so as an example, Anthony was in today, obviously you're talking about it tonight, so that gave the opportunity to do a deep dive on it. He worked through what these numbers are and why across the prior year at the 140. Currently, he's projecting to hold that line and so that is something that should be attainable. There's ebbs and flows within, how many signups and what programs, and if they're trying to get, some instances they're trying to get a program off the ground, they may find that to be, and I think that's part of the looking at it as an overall revolving fund. You have a loss or break even on a program, but by the next year it takes off. You're always trying to stay up on programming. So, you know, we did granularly, to some extent, walk through this sheet today. That's.
Okay. And just one last quick question for me. So the $200,000 of money that they keep, for lack of a better term, is that pooled with the town money? That's pooled
It's
money
not a
that's
separate. bank.
interest earning. It's not a separate, okay. Thank you.
You wouldn't each budget. People signed up for science camp. Zeros across the board. Wanted to point that out.
All right, John, you can sign up yourself for science. Tell us how it goes. Other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Becker. Okay, so we can move on to item 6, if that's okay, to hear a presentation on the Penfield Pavilion remediation and renovation projects, capital projects and operations manager Eli Gazal. So Eli.
He's gonna be
Remote?
remote for this and sharing his screens and photos and then giving a more overall verbal update on the projects.
So, hi Eli, I assume you're behind that screen somewhere?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right, that's great. Can you guys see my screen?
Thank you.
All right. All right, so just a quick update on Penfield. So all the foundation or work under the building has been complete. This includes the grade beam removals, helical pile installation, and new pile cap installation. The building is currently sitting on its new foundations, so no more foundation work needed. Contaminated fill. We originally anticipated about 7,000 tons. We have taken out 11,476 tons, and that is 100% complete. We notified Connecticut Deep and EPA of the completion of the remediation on the site. We also backfilled the entire site to elevation 8, so there are no areas below this on site that are below elevation 8. The contractor completed curb installations. They paved the parking lot and also installed and poured the concrete new sidewalks up in the front of the building there. We have connected all utilities to the building. Everything that we disconnected, we have reconnected, including water, gas, and also electricity. Over the next month or so, the contractor will be focusing on finishing the installation of deck boards and finishing up the ramps and the stairs all around the building. We are ahead of schedule. Right now, the contractor schedule is substantially completed at the end of this month. That'll include deck boards and railings all around the building. Once he does that, we will take down the site fence and regrade, do some final regrading around the site fence, and of course, clean up the site. Question everybody's probably wondering is change orders and where we are with the budget. So because of the overage on the Julian fill, that ate up most of our project contingencies and allowances. There were also some unknown existing conditions underneath the building that led to some change orders. The good news is up to today, we are able to handle all change orders within the project contingencies and allowances that we originally were authorized. One more thing I wanted to touch base on was the FEMA 50/50. We did not go over the 50/50. All foundation work has been completed. And there was no major change orders regarding anything 4 or 5 items that we agreed on with FEMA regarding the FEMA 50/50. So I'm going through some of the photos now, if you guys can see them on your screen. This photo here is showing the decks going on. The deck that was ultimately selected is a Kebony deck. It's a sustainable project. It's a sustainable product that mimics Ipe, except it's substantially cheaper. Here you can see more of the decks on the backside. We flew the drone today just to get some of these photos, but it was very windy, so I apologize for not. We needed to bring the drone down before it crashed, so I couldn't get the best photos. But in this photo here, you can see the sidewalks have been installed up in the front. There's a new what they call drop-off zone where parents and people coming to the pavilion can pull up to this front area here, drop off their beach items, and then pull off into a parking spot. Um, Then here's just an overall picture on the beach side of things showing the decks and the ramps and the boards going in. Any questions? That's all I have.
Thank you. We have some questions, Mr. Matola?
So does FEMA have to come out to make sure that one is in compliance with their regulations?
Yeah, so every month we've been sending updates of FEMA, including pictures and including where we are with the 50/50. My last correspondence with them was in December, where they showed or wrote interest in coming out to the site. I, of course, said anytime you guys would like. So right now we're just coordinating a date for them to come out. Ideally, we'd like them to come out when and I'm sure they'll agree on when the project is substantially completed. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a date confirmed on when FEMA will come out.
So when you're sending them information on a periodic basis, do they comment on anything? I mean, I guess my question is gonna be, it seemed to happen the last time. Are you concerned that they may come out when the project is done and say, oh, yeah, you missed something here and you have to redo something? That's my concern with FEMA. How does that whole thing work?
I will be happy to share my screen again and show you just a sample of what we share with FEMA. Hold on one second. Let me share my screen again. All right. So here's a sample. This is from December. This is their last update that I sent to them. This was originally put together when I was showing them the demo status. When we first started, everything was highlighted. I showed a demo of the grade beams. Everything that was highlighted showed demoed. This progressed. This is now showing all highlighted because in December we had completed all these tasks. Pile cap installation. As the pile caps were installed and poured and formed, I would highlight these and send them to them. Again, this is December, so all shows completed. And then this is just, progress photos that they always were appreciative to see. This is obviously before we poured any of the curbing in the front and the sidewalks. This is them coming together here in front of the building, the new grade beams. And then at the very end, I have a 50/50. This is what they were really concerned about. The 4 items that we discussed were demo of foundations, pile caps, concrete, structural steel, and the helical pile installation. And I would just provide them an update every month as to where we are as far as payments and the values of each of these items, based off the agreed value of the 50/50, not to totaling, excuse me, 2.725. To be transparent with them, there were some changes that we had throughout the process, throughout the job. There was one significant design change underneath the building in which I've emailed FEMA and I let them know that, we had a significant change. And they responded back, and I requested an answer from them, and they responded back saying, "Thanks so much. We don't have any further questions." So we've been keeping them very updated throughout the project.
All right, so you don't, and I appreciate what you've been doing. Right now, you don't anticipate any issues with it.
No, I do not.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Can I have a quick follow-up to
Yeah.
Mr. Matola's question? So the significant change that you mentioned, was that actually the helical piles that the change in design that we talked about before we kind of reapproved this, a year ago or so? Or was it something else?
No, it was something else. That originally, what you were mentioning with the helical piles, that was approved by them back before we even started the project.
Okay.
When I say major change, it wasn't a major change. It was
No.
actually minor in the grand scheme of things underneath the project, underneath the building. But a size of a foundation pier underneath the project needed to get bigger, and I did not feel comfortable moving forward unless I, sent them the email. So I sent them the email. I waited a few days. They didn't respond. Then I followed up, and then I got a response from them. So I felt better after that.
Great. Well, good to hear that we're on budget.
One comment.
Yes, Mr. Gerber.
I'm sure everyone here already knows this, but Eli's done a really excellent job managing this project. And for me, this being, the project that I started working with him on the first day in office, he's really inspired a lot of confidence amongst a lot of people, especially I think FEMA. I've observed his interactions with FEMA, how respectful he was and how transparent he was. And I can tell you that they were glowing in the way they responded to him. You could tell that they really, really appreciated it. So, and having been in some of the meetings with FEMA and watching the interaction and looking at the updates, it would be really surprising, although, you can't put anything out, but out of the realm of possibility. But, he did show you some of the earlier updates when underneath, really like close-up pictures of exactly what they were doing in each stage. So each section underneath, he was giving them close-ups. They could see everything, and they were very positive.
To hear. Mr. Curley?
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the update, Eli, and I agree. Your attention to detail is certainly appreciated, and noted. Couple of questions related to what the role that DEEP and FEMA have had in this whole renovation project. If I recall the details correctly, because this has been something we've been talking about for a while. Getting rid of the Julian fill was a big concern. Getting the building renovated without crossing the 50/50 math was a FEMA concern. But the other FEMA concern, if I recall correctly, was the grade of the beach area there, whether it was 11 feet or 8 feet. I think if I heard correctly, we're down to 8 feet, so that's FEMA compliant. At what point do we get something in writing from FEMA that says we're all good, we're back in compliance, we don't have to worry about the neighborhood losing their flood insurance eligibility and all that other stuff? And then as a follow-up to that, what's the next step in terms of the local, the grade? 8 feet, is it staying at 8 feet? Is it gonna go to 9 or 10 or 11, or what's the plan?
I think, Eli, do you want to answer the NOV question?
Yeah, I can. So once FEMA comes out to site and we do a site walkthrough, and they like everything that they see, then we'll formally request a removal of the NOV, and we'll start the paperwork trail there. But I didn't want to kind of ask them until they come out to site and walk the site.
And do you have any idea how long that takes before we get the final sign off? I mean, is it like the Army Corps of Engineers, where it's going to take years?
I don't anticipate it taking years. We've been in constant contact with with the folks up in FEMA. So at this point, they're probably waiting for us to ask, to be honest with you.
You were thinking definitely waiting till the decking is done, right?
Correct. Yep.
On DEEP, they came down, they did a site visit with Eli, and they were good. But we had to show.
But we'll get something in writing from them as well. Protections.
I don't know, actually. That's good.
A final remediation report will be submitted to DEEP, saying that we've removed all the Julian fill. And they usually say right back, no comment or no further questions. Yep.
And then in terms of the grade, 8 feet versus something other than 8?
We're definitely not prepared to talk about that. We don't have a plan yet, so we'll hold off until, you know, everything's signed off on. Oh, I should note that, you know, when we came for approval for additional amounts for this project, the one variable that we said was, you know, the amount of fill, and the amount of fill was what, ended up being like 4,000 tons more than we thought. And, so Eli did negotiate a better price on the removal of the remaining over 3,000 tons. And so that also helped us keep within the budget. Saved us like, I don't know, what, close to 100,000?
Yep.
Excellent.
So do we anticipate opening this facility sooner since it's ahead of schedule?
Anthony has a event scheduled, I think February 20 something. So I think it's a birthday party. So he's holding that line and I'm trying to meet it.
That's great. That's great.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh.
Eli, what were the reasons for the 64% increase in the amount of contaminated soil that needed to be removed?
It was essentially what we called
a lot.
Yeah.
Seems to be a lot.
Yep. It was a bowl effect. So as we got underneath the building, the Julian fill got deeper.
Did we not have records of how much fill was brought onto the site during the last when we were building the site?
They were very inaccurate records is my I asked the same question. It's just very inaccurate records as to what actually came to Penfield.
Who brought it there?
I'm not sure who the Julian?
Who brought who like you needed fill? Who's the contractor that asked for the fill and brought it there?
Oh, I'm not sure who exact. The contractor last time that built the last Penfield. Oh, their name escapes me. Skanska, I want to say.
And they didn't have records of how much fill they requested?
Not to my knowledge.
They had no records in regards to how many trucks of fill came in?
I think they did not handle importing the fill. I think the importation of fill was handled by the town.
Okay. But the town didn't decide how much fill was going to go there, right? It's the contractor who decides that, correct?
Yeah, typically the contractor will decide that, yes.
Yeah, because the town can't bring 200 more dump trucks of fill than we need, right? Because it would interfere with the project.
Correct.
Right? So are we saying that the contractor was part of the problem here? They don't have records.
I can't speak to that, Mr. Walsh, as to what happened before and why there was Julian fill brought there.
Did you request records to know when we were doing the estimates on how much fill you thought was there based on records?
Yeah, the estimates were.
What I remember is that this was the biggest unknown that Mr. Bremer talked to us about. I mean, I think he literally told us they had no idea that it could be twice as much. So this was the one big open item. And I think several of us were personally worried about the level of contingency in this because, you know, we were told that despite all the work they had done to try and retrieve records, and they were closer to it at the time, we didn't have those records. I don't know if that was intentional, if somebody got rid of the records.
It seems odd that we hired a company and so far they haven't been brought into the litigation, but seems odd that you'd have a construction company and not know how much was brought in. I mean, Eli, our people know currently how much fill has been brought in, correct?
To the yard, yes.
In the yard, right?
Yes.
It would seem odd if you have a commercial contractor you're paying market rate to and they don't maintain records to that degree, correct?
Yes, it is odd, yes.
Yeah, Mr. Curley.
Yeah, but it's also safe to say that even if we did have accurate records of the number of trucks that came in with X amount of yards, we didn't know how much of that may have been clean versus contaminated. Is that a fair comment, Eli?
Yes, that's fair to state. Yep.
And then can you help me better understand the bowl effect that you talked about? Is it a function of, you know, testing soil depth, around the perimeter of the building, but not being able to test in the center of the building? And then once you started the excavation, the fill went deeper in the center? Is that in a nutshell?
Yes, that's exactly it. Yep, we did borings around the parking lot, around the building, but we could not do borings underneath the building. We were able to get underneath the building, crawl underneath the building and take hand samples, but not dig 4 or 5 feet below. Yep.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Eli? All right. Well, Eli, thank you for the update. Thank you for all the great work that you've done on this project, and appreciate what Mr. Gerber said. You know, dealing with any regulator, the relationship we develop and their perception of our transparency is incredibly important to how they treat us and deal with us. And it sounds like you've done a great job there. It's unbelievable that we might actually have an event there in February. So thank you to everyone on the team with you that's helped get us there. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
All right. So we're going to move on to item 7 to hear an organizational update from First Selectman Bill Gerber. So this was an item we just, we've been talking throughout the months, I think, back to when the budget was first presented. The board members who were here will probably remember that Mr. Gerber was fairly new in office and had identified a number of priorities that he wanted to focus on, a number of problems he had identified, but he didn't quite have all of the implementation plans sorted out. And he promised us that he would keep us informed as he was going along, how he was addressing some of these issues, and some of those are addressed through organizational changes. So we asked him to give an update tonight. Turn it over to you, Bill.
Yeah, first I'd like to thank David Becker for work on CFO, interim CFO. I mean, the one thing I'm not going to miss, although it may have continue, is getting emails at 3 a.m. and all during the weekends, but he's a workaholic and he's done an amazing job, and just so great to have met him and had him come on board. I think Tom Harris is worth the wait. We did interview a lot of candidates, and when Tom came through, knew this was going to be, a special person, and pretty rare find for a municipality. So welcome. The project management group is really what I'm going to talk about tonight. And we pretty clearly, as an RTM member and then as First Selectman, we have a spotty record of managing projects through their life cycles, keeping track of them, keeping track of all the funding against them, the costs, and the timelines, and then communicating those timelines. And we've talked a lot about that really from early on with the capital project schedule that we invested a lot of time in. And Sabrina, someone who's been in front of you, has done an amazing job, but it's still in Excel. It's still very time intensive for her. We also, from the management of construction and other projects, we have silos currently, or we're starting to break them down, where capital projects can be run out of engineering. Used to be WPCA had their own engineer, which was not integrated with the rest of the engineering department. Fire ran its own projects for renovating fire stations. Police ran their own. They actually managed their own projects for renovating their headquarters. Parks and Rec ran their own projects, and then of course municipal buildings. You have people like Jim Ryan who manage projects, and of course the Board of Ed has a very different process for substantial projects. So some of the objectives of creating project management group, we have a group of focused people with engineering and construction background, involved at every part of every phase of construction projects from conception through construction. And that would be at various intensities, because the engineering group, the intensities of their involvement would depend partly on whether our engineering group designs in-house, and we do construction in-house versus going outside. So our goal is to have the most effective project management that we can have. We want to reduce, to the extent possible, reliance on outside project managers, create greater efficiencies, and find ways to save money on projects through smart design and construction and bidding. So we also have a goal of a disciplined approach to communications, to the departments, to various boards, and to the public and other stakeholders, and to be able to, as projects progress, report transparently on a basis. We've developed, and will continue to develop and maintain a comprehensive consolidated list of projects. And one of the goals is to prioritize the projects through objective criteria and rank them. And then ultimately, we want to have a multi-year capital improvement plan that balances the short-term needs and medium and long-term goals, and along with financial sustainability. So the financial sustainability piece, these projects, every time we change a project, be flowing through automatically to the waterfall, so that we know what the potential impact on the bottom line of the town is. And we're going to create a repository of experience and expertise available to all the departments and town bodies. So effective project management. That includes in-depth understanding of project scope and objectives, risk identification, risk management, risk mitigation strategies, working with our in-house engineering group on in-house projects, determining whether we are going to do the work in-house or go externally, determine optimal project delivery methods, and ensure clear and effective bidding processes. So our RFPs should be clear and concise, and easy to understand. We will have a group that can identify the critical path activities for a project and how to allocate resources, what resources be allocated, and there will be rigor and consistency around estimates for project costs and timelines. They will manage the costs and timelines, and with rigorous change order management, which really does require rigor. You can lose a lot of money if you just really accept change orders. And then one thing which I see them doing already is expanding our vendor networks, and then managing vendors so that we know that vendors know who we are, and that they know that we're real, that when we put a bid out, it's a valid bid, that we're not giving jobs to favorites. And I think today, just as an aside, we saw an example of the work that this group did to try to get vendors interested in the consulting project around the Dwight School project. They put that out to bid, that consulting project, and they did a walkthrough today. And I was amazed to find out that there were 17 consultants came for that walkthrough. Now, we don't know how many are going to bid, but Eli is in charge of this group under David. Eli was really quite happy about it, and mentioned to me that, you know, his people were out there working the phones to try to get people interested, which, you know, I think some discipline around doing that should help with the sometimes lack of bidders that we have on projects. We're going to standardize contracts to the extent possible, ongoing communications with all the relevant stakeholders. And another thing, which I'll touch on in a bit, is quality assurance and inspections. You know, this group of the people that are in this group right now, I will get to the people and how many there are and where they came from in a minute. But one of them is who replaced the engineer who was in WPCA, has taken over part of the inspection around the what's not East Trunk, the Tide Gate, Attorney Creek, Tide Gate project. And just by doing that and reducing the number of inspection days from the external consultant by 2 days a week has saved us about $300,000, $320,000, which sort of more than pays for itself a year. So some other examples of recent benefits besides Turney Creek. This group is now involved in the RLMS contaminated soil removal for the turf field. They were able to negotiate a better deal for the contaminated soil removal than would have been in place had they not gotten involved. That was about $280,000 of savings. I mentioned the interest in the Dwight project, the savings that Eli himself negotiated for Penfield contaminated soil removal. You know, this is part of what this type of negotiations on change orders will be a major part of how they learn how to do that, save the town money. Another example is we had an engineer that was seated at WPCA and not really interacting with the rest of the town engineering department very much at all, not a lot of oversight. That person left when we tried to bring her into town hall with the rest of the group, but her replacement has taken a project for the secondary digester that was behind schedule and brought it back and is now finished ahead of schedule. So, you know, that sort of coordination and skill set is probably going to save us a significant amount of money. That's our hope. So what is the engineering department doing? Because some of the people in this group have come from WPCA, but also the engineering department vacancies. Engineering department will concentrate more on in-house design, permitting for town projects, permitting for third-party applications, and they also do some project management. But the goal is to do as much in-house design as we can, because that should be a focus for their skill set. It should be utilized to the full extent. So let's see. So yeah. So if you look at the budget at the beginning of the year, we had one engineer in WPCA, and that person left, and that person is now in the project management group. We had one engineer or project manager, Eli Gonzalez, was in engineering. He's now transferred over to project management. We had one engineer who left and was replaced by another project manager, and her name is Wendy Falk, and she's an architect, incredibly good at managing projects. She's managing this Dwight School project. She is in project management, and we had a project person leave And he was replaced by another person with similar skill set who will be in project management. So for that, for that piece of it, it's been basically a swap of where people are sitting and who are they're reporting to. They're not reporting through the engineering group. They're reporting to Eli for project management, but really, still part of the general overall, the project management work that was being done in one group is now being done in another. The grant management person that we had was part-time. She left. We've replaced her with a full-time grants manager. This is something that we talked about at prior meetings and had a fair amount of support from this body. I think people asked if we should do that. And I do believe this is a really good step in the right direction to try to get more money. This is a person who should more than pay for themselves through more grants. We're having issues with federal grants. We were told, really difficult to administer a federal grant and didn't want to really go for a lot of them because of the difficulty in administering them. I think now we have this person who's very competent and experienced. We should be going for more federal grants as well. And usually those are bigger dollars. We will likely want to go for federal grants for some of our sewer system, additional trunk upgrades, and we want to have designs in place and be able to pounce on any available money through federal grants for that, because as John Marsilio has pointed out, they're likely to be in the $20–30 million range to continue up from the east trunk for the north. That's really it. So even though we have a 0.5% 0.5 FTE increase in grants, we also have an FTE decrease in finance. Somebody left, and somebody who is currently there is going to take that person's job and will be able to do so because of reduced requirement for work on payroll, which should be alleviated through pay-com implementation. Any questions?
Thank you. Ms. Ruggiero.
Thank you. Just wanted to, are you gonna share or be able to share an org chart? I was trying to keep notes on what you said, but I'd like to just run through what I think you said.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful. So it sounds like Eli is running this project management group, which has been brought together to kind of get from what, and as opposed to having it in all separate departments, it's gonna help organize the group to make sure we do things across the board. And hopefully will result in, a lot of the there's and then there's three people that are in the engineering, this project manager group. One, it sounds like came from engineering.
So in total?
There's 3 or 4.
There's 4, including Eli. So Eli has underneath him 3 engineers or 3 leaders.
Project managers.
3 project men.
And one was Wendy.
One it replaced someone from engineering. Her name's Wendy Falk. One's FOK.
The project manager.
She's a project manager. She's an architect. She worked on major civil projects in New York City.
So will she? You said she's running the Dwight project in Penfield.
She's not running the project. She's running this evaluation project
for consultant.
Yeah.
The 100,000 is part of that whole thing.
Yeah. The
money.
walkthrough that we just talked about, and with.
So will she be designated towards helping Board of Ed with a lot of their projects?
So she is, but the Board of Ed, they have a process, and, you know, part of what I hope is that we'll sort of win over the Board of Ed and that they will want, you know, to rely more and more on us. I think we have some ability to make sure that someone from this group is involved in Board of Ed projects, because we do appoint, you know, building committees. She is listening in on HVAC projects and things like that. So I believe bringing that kind of discipline, in-house discipline to all of these projects could save us a lot of grief.
Yeah.
And she's very disciplined.
And then for the grant position, we had a part-timer who left, but a full-timer. And I know that we had talked about this, and there's a lot of potential money that we could be leaving by not even trying to get. Is one person, one full-time person, because I know when we were talking, is one like enough?
I remember this conversation. You
Yes,
asked
because I had
that,
asked
yeah.
that then, because
Yeah.
it sounds like what John was sharing.
Yeah.
with like tens of millions of dollars. I mean, it was a lot of money
Yeah.
for especially the WPCA.
I mean,
It's
it's a
not like
good
they could use
question.
their own person alone with, I mean, I don't know, because
Yeah, I mean, he's.
I agree that it
getting
could
his
pay
feet
for
wet.
itself.
Yeah, we should probably wait and see on that, but with the amount of projects that we have, you know, we don't know sort of what the new federal administration is gonna have available in terms of grants and things like that. So we probably should wait at least a few months and see how what the temperature's like.
And then the finance person, we had someone leave. I mean, that makes sense. You have some automation or some kind of
Yeah.
improvements with payroll, so now they don't have to do that manually. There's a lot of
Yeah,
issues
I
that
mean,
we've
there's
discussed in
in
the past
transition
year.
and she's still doing payroll work,
But that
she-
will help offset her workload to cover the gap, so that's where you're kind of filling the hole of this. So in your mind, you're down half a head then. You lost a full head in finance, but you gained half a head in grant.
Yeah, I mean, we are down half a head. We've had some, in terms of budget, probably down a lot more than that because we had vacancies for a period of time, but in terms of current FTE, I believe it's half a head.
Makes sense. And then my only other question is, are we using, I think we had mentioned the last time when we talked about, and welcome, working together. I thought we had brought in a temp or somebody to help out with the,
With the
with
budget.
some of the budget.
We have a very experienced temp. She worked on the budget for the Board of Ed for years, many years.
And they're
So
gonna
she
do
jumped
the
right in.
budget season, will
Yeah,
it help us through that
She's
process?
part-time.
Yeah, that role is, we're in the process of beginning, we haven't started interviews yet, but if that is filled, she's still committed to be a part of, you know, the trail there, so we're not gonna have to get, so.
Actually,
It's possible.
shout out to Caitlin Bossy.
Yeah.
She found her. She knows her.
Good, that always works out well. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure I had all the.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, that was very helpful.
Mr. Matola?
Just the only thing I think it's great what you're saying. So what's happened to the engineering department? It seems like you've taken some people from the engineering doing some different type of work, or is it the same work but under a different?
So engineering was sort of not organized in a way that focused on project management. You had engineers who were doing a little, you know, this and then doing a little project management. I think, and this was something that, you know, I've talked to, you know, professionals who, you know, this town that needs project managers, like people, I've met people work for major engineering companies. Like, you need project managers that see a project through and track every, you know, every dollar and the timelines, and make sure that they're looking ahead to make sure everything's coordinated, that you don't have, you know, a project that's held up for months because, you know, they didn't coordinate appropriately with the utility or something like that. And, you know, what I found here was that assigning individuals to a project that were not necessarily project managers, they were kind of like babysitting a project, but not really focused on the management piece of it, has led to you know, a number of issues over the years that at least, you know, I've seen, and I think this board has encountered where, you know, you're not looking at, you know, original budgets that necessarily made sense. They weren't fleshed out enough necessarily. The bidding process, you know, you get a couple of bidders back, you know. So I just felt it was really important for the town because these are where the big dollars are. You know, it could be the difference between, you know, it could be $1 million, $2 million, it could be $10 million difference in a big project. If you haven't bid it out, you know.
So you got, if I took some notes too, and this might be wrong. So you have WPC engineer left. And so somebody else in.
Yeah.
Now
She's a PE, but working as a project
manager. So she'll be handling WPCA, but town things too. So that's new.
and as
Right.
She took a project that was ongoing and was behind, you know, schedule and kind of struggling. And we just got an email from our new WPTF superintendent saying this is unbelievable. It's ahead of.
And Eli was in engineering, so he's in charge of this now.
Yeah.
So Wendy's the architect.
Wendy and Beata is engineer.
What's the other person's name?
Beata, B-E-A-T-A.
What? T-A? First name or last name?
She's the one who, she swapped out with somebody else who wasn't. Beata.
Beata swapped out with Christine Pacelli.
Who was in engineering.
No, she was in WPTA. So
So
Beata is just sitting, yeah.
Who's in engineering right now?
So in
With engineering
engineering
stuff.
right now, you've got, you know, survey, you've got engineering manager, the
Mega.
senior civil engineer, yeah.
All right, so I guess
They
my
have five.
question is, you haven't rated engineering to such an extent that it'll affect what engineering's doing. Engineering is still fine. They're gonna focus more on design, right? Projects.
That is, I mean, Bill would like another engineer, like to build another engineer, but, you know, my hope is that they will do less project management and
More design work.
Design, work, and they have survey work, internal survey and for third party.
The same goes
I mean,
for grants.
I'm sorry, permitting work, internal permitting and.
And so would we anticipate that during the budget, you're gonna have a part that says project management department with employees listed and budgeted like that?
That is what I'm gonna ask for because, you know, while it's not like there's been a major change in what people do, where they sit has changed. And, I think it would be really helpful for the town to have this as a recognized part.
And right now for this, there's really no budget impact for this current.
No, I mean, as a matter of fact, right now, we're, you know, below budget for the first half of the year.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Vitale.
Go somebody else.
Mr. Myers.
I was just gonna ask about the current project management software that the town uses.
Yeah.
Does it need to be upgraded and do you foresee investment in the software?
So for specific project, like for actually managing a project itself, as opposed to what you guys are gonna see, Eli, are you on?
Yep, I'm on.
Yeah,
Yeah, so for
happy
specific
with this?
project, we have been trying to standardize our project management software. And when I mean project management, this is a software that reviews submittals, RFIs, document revisions. It's a software called Procore. It's used all across construction management companies across the United States. So we are trying to make that a requirement in our bid specifications for the consultants or contractor to be able to supply that for the job.
But for external, we have not, our plan was to get out of Excel for what you guys see for capital project management. And we looked at a bunch of programs and some of them, you know, each had their shortcomings. So
You talked about Munis. Munis has some capabilities.
Munis does, but we couldn't even get them to come and demonstrate it. So, I mean, it took them forever. So their service is so terrible that if we were to go forward with Munis, we might need to hire a third party to help us, to explain it to us, because they won't, they're.
And we own the Munis module, so they don't have any incentive to come in and tell us how to use it. Is that it, or?
No, yeah, it's a consulting arrangement that you would pay Munis to come in and show how to use it. But there are, we looked at a bunch of decent programs, and it'd be great to have. What we're looking for is something. I don't know if it would, if we could get it to be linked somehow to the actual project management software. But even if it's separate, it would be something that every time we make a change, it would be logged, noted, and it would flow through. I mean, preferably to something that you guys could see like immediately.
You would want to also have it like integrate with Munis in some fashion as well, right? Because
Yeah, I mean, what we looked at was something where they actually implemented something for us, and then we didn't go forward with it, but that you could then transfer files from Munis, project costs.
Part of our Munis is on the sending data in problematic. The ways to do that cleanly. And getting data out, however, is easier. So for instance, we're now on our even just the Google Sheets version. Sabrina is doing an export that goes right, and it's all been mapped to be able to be more efficient.
to feed that massive document she gives
The
us.
massive document is still
Correct.
there. It's
Track
still
it.
overused.
So most of these other, tools, whatever you come up with, is gonna most likely be more so focused Munis out versus Munis.
So more like a reporting tool. versus
Yeah, it's a
something else.
reporting.
But you can report out your actuals and have that then feed and then work with them for project management from there. We do want to talk about something that then at least our discussions we should integrate grants and at least some other pieces should act more. This is kind of.
Was that, are you good?
Thank you.
Mr. Walsh, you had a question.
Questions. Let's talk about the measures. Part-time. That person resigned. August. And when was the new person hired full-time?
Last week.
December 18th.
And the position that, because grant manager is that person in the finance department. Employee of the finance department.
That position reports to me. And
So what
works
department?
closely with capital
What
projects.
department is that in?
Right now, they're billing out.
Wait a minute. You can't
He
have.
doesn't have a.
Yeah,
You-
I mean.
Yeah,
Do
that's.
you have a department or not?
He doesn't have a department yet. That's sort of part of.
So are you,
Okay.
you're gonna restructure departments during the budget?
COO in the first selectman's office. Department.
That is where it is.
Yeah.
Currently.
We haven't done a reorg.
We need to do a reorg because the charter says that the charter is pretty clear. And just to be clear, this body's handled this before and I watched the meeting. So I just watched the meeting. I think we should all watch the meeting. From December 16th of 2019. When the previous first select, Brenda Kupchak, came to this body and all they really wanted to move was to transfer $70,000 out of animal control, $15,000 at a library regular payroll. And I was not available that night. It was a special meeting. I was in New York at a business event. But I watched it. And it went out for 2.5 hours. We talked a lot about the charter that night this board. About how can this be done? It had to be done with an appropriation because I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. Because 12.7 of our charter is very clear. And Madam Chairman, when you brought this thing up to make it even clearer, that it says that no town officer, board, commission, authority, committee, or department shall expend any sums for any purpose in excess of the amount appropriated by the town for such purpose, unless such expenditures shall be approved and appropriate transfers in the budget made by the Board of Finance, which basically means that you cannot move money between departments. And now we seem to, when we get into it, seem to have a new department called the Project Management Group, which seems to have some type of, I don't know the full title of Eli, but he's the manager of the department. And then there's 3 people who were brought in from other departments. One was an architect hired fresh. One was, excuse me if I'm saying it wrong, but Ms. Orson, who was working in the engineering department. And somebody else, maybe, I think, somebody from WPCA, a completely different wing of our town government was brought in. And they're part of this department. And we've done no appropriations to move money around for any of this stuff, nor has it come to us.
I don't think.
Just because the money's there doesn't mean between departments. Money, if we set a budget for this town under our charter, once we set that, so say, for example, the budget for the engineering department. You just can't say, oh, I'm just gonna move this person from engineering to this department. You need to have the money in that department to pay them. And to pay their
But right
benefits
now,
and everything.
they're still, I mean, they're still being paid. Though, I mean, they're not being paid under his department because his department doesn't exist yet. So it's like a virtual. I mean,
Well, that's the problem. You can't have virtual departments.
yeah, but we haven't.
You're doing a restructuring without doing a formal restructuring.
He's assigning duties, different duties.
That's doing a restructuring without doing
You
a
mean in
restructuring.
terms of who they talk to every day, or
You seem to have an entire department, the project.
I have an intention to have a department. Right
So that
now,
department doesn't exist now?
no, it's not on the org chart. Like, I want to get it on. the org chart.
You're telling me that they're doing work already as a department.
They're doing the same type of work, but more focused than they were doing in engineering. That's sort of what the point I was trying to make was, we had an engineering group that was doing engineering, project management and engineering work. And I'm having them focus on project management now, but I'd like to have a department set up. I'd like to have a department set up called the project management department. I mean, if you'd like them to go back to their original chairs, that would be it. But we haven't run over our appropriations for the year. I mean, we're halfway through.
What, for the whole town? You haven't run over the appropriation?
No, for engineering. We haven't run or project management is it's a concept. This is a concept that I'm telling you about. I mean, all that's happened is they've changed where they sit at this point, but I would like to change it on the org chart.
Well, because it sounds like a department's really been set up. I mean, you have a different area where they all sit.
Well, if you reject this, then we won't set it up.
Well, what it really should have been, to be quite honest with you, and this is what, John, you talked about this, and Ms. Marmy had talked about it, and Lori, you talked about it. It should have been planned, and we are in the midst of creating the budget.
Right.
The budget time. And it should have been, this whole thing should have been discussed during the budget processes. Here's my budget message. This is what I want to do, and this is what
I think that's, I
want to
mean,
do. But
And I,
we haven't really done, we're not really.
well, when just to keep it, so 2 things. Is it your intent to affect this reorganization through the upcoming budget?
It is. I think we clarified that, and that is
So that's
why you want to be here.
Yes.
Today.
Yes, and so why you're here is to sort of give a preview of this. The other thing, and I just want to be really clear, I said this at the beginning. We asked you a dozen times or more. I asked you multiple times to the point where you were annoyed with me about, well, I don't blame you. this entire board asked, you identified these issues during last year's budget process, but you did not have a solution. And you said that you needed time to come up with a solution, organizational, systems, et cetera. And that you would come to this board and keep us updated as you went along, and you would be transparent about it. So that's what we're trying to accomplish tonight, is to understand what's going on, and we appreciate that. So I mean, I'm just, and the fact is, so we've got, so you're doing some things in anticipation of an organizational change. We haven't hired, headcount is flat, right? No, but there's been no new hires. We have this one full-time grant manager versus a part-time grant manager, but that's covered within the department budget. So I just want to be clear about what we're talking about here, because from my perspective, we anticipated this and we talked about it. I even thought, I was pretty sure during the time of the budget that you were going to come to us mid-year and ask us for more money, to be honest. You haven't done that because it seems like you're just shifting people around. But I kept raising that point because I was concerned. Many of us asked, wait a minute, you've identified all these issues that you've got. Are these addressed in your budget? Or are they fixed in your budget? Are they funded in your budget? And you said, no, I need time to develop the plans. So I don't want there to be some perception that this was, I mean, we knew at the time the budget was passed that, this plan was not put together and that, you needed time to do that. And that's why we're here. So I want to be clear on what the concern is.
But also I would say, yeah,
Who's Wendy Fock? When was she hired? And what department is she in? I mean, it sounds like she was hired for this group.
well,
She wasn't an engineer in the engineering department. She's an architect. We have an architect in engineering?
she's significant civil engineering
Manager.
project management experience. Yeah, we do, that was the plan to hire project manager.
What department is she being paid at?
Engineering?
Yeah,
You said she replaced someone in engineering.
yeah, she replaced, the fellow who, right, yeah.
Question. Do you intend to utilize the charter section 6.1G to conduct the reorganization? Okay. And you'll do that before the budget process?
Or is that part of the budget process?
It's the story.
It requires RTM approval, so it has to be.
Well, the RTM approves the budget, right? So do they?
It's very clear in 6.1G that it's a separate product.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just a nice way to clean this up.
Yeah, no, that's,
David, where does Wendy Fock get paid at? Get that tomorrow, but.
Sure.
No
problem.
Yeah, and I'd like, if I could, and just to that, we could have absolutely come and asked for, and probably I would ask based upon all the different things that this board consistently found along with the administration during budget and subsequent meetings, probably, and additionally adding possibly even multiple. Worked diligently over the past almost year since budget to find ourselves in a position where we are currently net down FTE, and realizing also within the current budget year some of the vacancies, and taking our time and being very deliberate who we hired and what we seeked out to be very, very responsible in our approach to this. So, I think it is frustrating because it certainly sitting here today feels like it's being made as if we've seriously added 4 or 5 extra headcount somewhere or something to that effect. We are net down FTE. We're going to come in under within the budget. And yes, during the budget window, and we'll speak to that provision, clean this up into better, structured departments, but best end result is what we've been going for.
yeah, let me just say one thing, Jim. If what you're concerned about is process.
I'm concerned about the charter. That's what I'm really concerned about. I think we all gotta follow the charter.
Right.
And when Brenda did the same thing, they said that they had a transfer request to move salaries. mean, I watched it.
But we're,
Greg, the funny thing about it is you were getting ready to be on this board already. You were in the front row. You were right in the front row. I found that I read that, you know the way I'm talking.
But I think
I
what
thought
you're
that was
saying-
different though, Jim.
No.
No, I think, cause if I remember.
Yeah, but we were adding a full-time chief of staff and a CAO that never existed, so it's a little bigger than I think.
I don't, I think if you're asking where this person's getting paid out of, you know, if it's not engineering, I assume it's engineering. I don't know where else. We don't have a department set up. So right now it is where people are sitting and who they're collaborating with 90% of the day. But this department doesn't exist. If I were to leave tomorrow and someone came in and said, I liked it the old way, then those people would just go back to where they were sitting. It's really, we shuffle things around so that people collaborate. Like to, I would hope that you would see the issues that we've had in project management over the years and would agree something we can, we should be able to strengthen. If it's a process issue and you think we're not in line with the charter, we can get a legal opinion on that. We certainly, our intention is to be in line with the charter. So I do intend to seek.
Well, it's just like we can't have virtual departments all over the town and just continue to pay them for departments that people don't work in. I mean, it sounds like this department's up and running already. Now, I'm not saying that it's not a good idea. It's just that the charter was meant to have, you have a department, you should have a budget for that. Until you have a budget for that department, we move this body, this specific body, the charter says, has to move money from either another department, engineering, into this department, or whatever. That's what the charter says has to be done. Until that happens, you can't do it.
He's got a project.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I just.
You call it a project management group, which is not technically right now a new department. It's a group within engineering doing.
Doing engineering, yeah, they're doing.
But I hear what you're saying, and then we'll fix it during the budget process if you're concerned about it.
hold on though, I think we're all concerned that the town followed the charter but I do see it as a process issue. And I don't think it should wait until the budget process gets underway. We're right around the corner. I would think that if the charter has a provision that allows for reorganization and it requires RTM approval, and your expectation or hope is that you create a new department, that you go through that process sooner rather than later. And until that process is seen through, you can start to assemble people in a group, as you pointed out, that's not an official department, but that means that one person's gonna be, or two people are gonna have their salaries in engineering, one person's gonna have their salary in WPCA. And I didn't catch in the notes when you talked earlier about where the fourth person was coming from, but the point being, I think any administration should be able to have the ability to create their organization as they feel works the best for the town, but you have to follow the charter. And I think the first step has to be figure out what your org chart is gonna look like, take it through the RTM process to get approved. Once that's approved, then we'll have the ability to transfer money between departments, and then we'll be ready to go for the budget process. But that's only a month or two away, so.
Are you settled on this structure, or are you still, because it sounded like you were still working through some things? I mean, have you not?
I mean, there's some minor things,
Okay.
the way, with Tom joining.
Right.
And make sure that we have the right lines of responsibility that balance finance and capital projects.
So you, in other words, you would not be, are you not ready to finalize a reorganization that's going to be consistent with the budget today?
This is a project manager under operations with project management staff who have significant project management experience who've been hired, and if this falls through, then I guess they'll go to engineering, but it's not really what I'm hoping.
Mr. Meyer? Yeah.
It sounds like, I'm sorry, one follow-up. It sounds like a good idea and concept. I mean, clearly there are functions that need to be centralized. I mean, the equivalent would be purchasing. Wouldn't want every department going out and going through their own purchasing process, right? You centralize things like that. And this to me makes a lot of sense. You see a lot of project managers or transaction managers or whatever to quarterback something from start to finish. So it makes sense. The other thing where I take comfort is you've done this in a way where you manage the overall FTE count and budget dollars. So I think we just need to make sure we cross our Ts and dot our Is and follow the process that's been outlined in the charter, and we should be good.
Mr. Myers?
I agree with you, Mr. Curley. So, have you or has anyone in HR had any formal or informal conversations with the 4 individuals that will make up this department? Do you see any pushback when they find out they're not reporting to the person that they're reporting to now?
No, because in essence, they're working with Eli every day.
And Eli's currently an engineer. Eli was budgeted in engineering.
He's still being paid out of engineering, but he's not sitting in engineering.
And that's the problem. It's like we have this pseudo committee, department that's been established already. And we're saying, oh, we can avoid the charter provision. We could prevent the Board of Finance from having to do their role.
No, no one is saying that.
We haven't moved.
I don't agree with that.
Well, then it should be being done now.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Should be being done now.
Project management within engineering, and in the budget season, it's gonna be a different department. No, yes, you,
John, you had a
you
different.
and I disagree with you.
Okay, but you sang a different tune when it was you, Sheila.
Totally different.
No, Jim, I don't disagree with you, but let's be real about this.
Yeah.
We sit here every year, you've been here,
Yeah.
where we transfer money between departments 6 months after year end or 4 months after year end. But we're okay with that because we also sit here every quarter and get an update from departments saying, I'm over, I'm under, here's where it nets out, here's where we are. And we take care of that administrative part afterwards, but we do it with full transparency on what's going on. So we don't necessarily, because there's mechanics involved with it and we do that movement after the fact, but we do it with full transparency on what's going on, which I think is what we're trying to accomplish here. I don't agree for a minute that we should be subverting the charter or trying to hide anything or trying to do anything that's like, contrary or not allowing this board to fulfill our role at all. So I fully agree with you on that. And I fully agree with what Craig said.
So we right now have the department set up where there's a head of the department, Eli.
But we don't have a department.
Not a department, it's a group, it's management, the project management group.
Let me-
Engineering.
Let me ask you,
We're moving they're moving their seats. They have a department set up. They have a management structure. They are operating as a department. And the only thing we're not doing is following the charter and moving the money to complete that. That's the only thing we haven't done. I don't know how you don't see that.
I have a question because I wasn't at that first meeting. It's interesting to me that there's some precedent on it. But so like what's vague to me is at what point does multiple different departments collaborating on a project, getting a group together under the direction of, the top people, the COO.
Yeah.
When does that just sort of natural collaboration between departments then suddenly veer into, well, this is a reorganization and you're in violation of the charter? And I'm not saying it isn't, I'm just like, where is your line? Because it's
Here's my line. I'm shocked to hear that we have a department set up. People are actually moving.
But that's
Yes, these three people, one from WPCA, completely different area of the government.
but you can't,
Completely like other side of not even part of the town.
but it's at the beginning, you're saying, well, we have another department. The point is, do we have another department or just they're starting?
Well, the department where we're just like paying them out of the other departments.
Well, but he's in charge.
WPCA is paying.
But just for the WPCA, which is on our waterfall representing currently over 20%. Right,
Yeah.
whether they're paying for it or we're paying for it, right? WPCA pays for a project manager, right?
Yes.
That project manager has historically been sent down to the WPCA to have minimal involvement actually in significant WPCA programs. For instance, the East Trunk didn't even think that they were gonna be the project manager. $30 million project, half paid for by the town, half paid for by WPCA and grants. Wasn't even teed up to even know when they may or may not be involved in it. Had attended a handful of meetings at best. So moving their physical seating location to town hall in a group, however you wanna set that up. At the end of the day, the WPCA is still gonna continue to pay for project management services from the town, right? But this person is now integrated in a group of people sitting next to each other who actually day in and day out focus on it with somebody above them looking at their overall workload, looking at what they're doing. And they're also seated, you know, essentially at the epicenter of finance, grants, the overall operations to be integrated in. So, I mean,
All right, what?
moving where somebody.
We can debate this all night. Can we agree? So Mr. Gerber, can you check with the town attorney? And can you validate what the appropriate process is, you know, based on what's going on? Maybe you've talked to him already. But can you confer with him on the appropriate process to follow through? And then
If we have to fix it, we'll fix it.
and come back to us. And
Yeah, I've conferred with him and said it's my intention
okay,
to go in front of the RTM.
okay,
To create, you know, this department.
okay. And timing is what? What are you thinking about terms about timing?
Soon. Very soon.
I mean, I don't disagree with what anyone said. I am personally, though, what I took away from the conversation and what I focused on is a couple things. One, we have gotten, I don't know, we've probably gotten 100 emails from members of the public, precipitated apparently by an email from the RTC claiming that you were hiring all sorts of unbudgeted positions. That appears to be false. The new people that you hired have been replacements. Do I have that right? Because I think that should be clear.
We need to find a way.
Hang on, the grant manager, okay, and accusations of being in violation for the charter for hiring unbudgeted positions. So so we've hired replacements, number one. And I just want to be clear on that. Number two, the grant manager was budgeted part-time, was hired as full-time. There was a vacancy for part of the year, and that full-time salary is still being paid for with the existing appropriation, which is where the legal appropriation is controlled out of at the department level, right? So we have not violated the charter or gone over the budget because we're paying, that position is being paid for itself, and things can move around line items within the department budget. Okay, so that was important to me. My third takeaway is that I've seen over the years this town spend millions of dollars on outside project management fees, owners reps, all kinds of things where they come in and they take a piece of a project and they walk away. And we are left with, they don't take it from start to finish. They don't budget. They don't help us budget. They don't see it through. They don't have full accountability.
Their incentives aren't necessarily aligned.
Their incentives aren't aligned. We retain none of that knowledge internally. And we spend, I don't know what the average project management costs are in a project, 5%, 10%. I mean,
If Eli's still on, we've
okay.
Quite often 5% or more.
But this is a cost savings opportunity. And I think we should care about that. I mean, we really should care about that on behalf of our taxpayers, because this is a big deal. This is real money that we have a staggering number of capital projects on the waterfall. We've been getting burned on bids. We've had everything come in many times over budget. And to me, this seems like an actual opportunity to contain and better manage costs. So that was my other takeaway. So I'm happy to hear that. I do think that it's important to make sure that the process is correct, that we follow the charter. And if you can get back to us on the timing of when and actually get that scheduled with the RTM, whether that's during the budget process, before the budget process, whatever, but it is January. So in less than 2 months, we're going to be sitting here going through a budget, and we should expect to be seeing a budget with a new organization in it that has But basically, an operations department is what you're telling us. Okay. So if you can get back to us and you know, we should, you know, I'd like to, you know, and I'll let the board know what to expect. But you know, for the rest of it, I think these are changes that are sorely needed. I mean, when I hear some of the stuff is music to my ears, standardizing our project management practices, standardizing our software, you know, retaining, you know, hiring better talent, retaining some of these people internally. This is the kind of thing that we should be doing as a town, especially given what we have on our list. So I don't want to discount any of the process issues, but this is all.
I would like to hear more about it. Will tell you, it's a little scary that there's gonna be this few people who also wanna take on all the Board of Ed projects. This sounds like with all the spending we need to do, all the expertises you need, running that project, especially Board of Ed projects and a whole Dwight project, having 3 people and a supervisor be running point.
Versus no one.
No, and as opposed to hiring somebody else out specifically on the project.
Not actually what I said.
Yeah, no, I mean,
You said that you wanted to be the project manager on Board of Ed projects.
No. Not the project manager on board of, I mean, certainly.
They what?
I
don't understand. I sat here and listened to you.
What are we doing on the Dwight project? What is Wendy Falk doing on the Dwight project? You've been involved and we're very appreciative of what we were doing on the Dwight project and voted on bringing consultant. What are we doing on that project? It's interviewing consultants, it's doing walkthroughs, it's setting up timelines, it's, you know, so, you know, we're not gonna, and there will be capacity issues. I mean, we're still gonna have to use some PMs, external PMs, but.
Okay. I just thought I heard you say during the process that they were gonna be the project managers, and I just thought I heard our chairwoman say, oh, wow.
Every project?
no.
We could save the 5%.
Jim, as someone who has.
No, I mean, is it every project or is it only a couple?
As we can. I mean, I think I'm not.
See, this is what I think
sure
we need to lay out is what projects will this project management group be managing?
So we've assigned Wendy to attend, as an example, the HVAC. That is a $39 million multi-year project that has multiple schools, multiple phases of these schools. So that is actually something that went to a building committee and would maybe once a year at best get an update at the board of select.
Okay.
For 3 members sitting on a building committee. Other than that.
She's not gonna be the project manager.
If I can, the town would hand that off to the Board of Ed staff to attend as liaisons and for the project managers that are on. Okay? No visibility whatsoever back on a regular basis to the administration and through that back out to the elected boards on the town side. Wendy's been assigned to the project. She's not the primary. There are multiple, you've got an owner's rep, project managers, construction managers on that project, right? So we now have eyes and ears on that project. She has weighed in on a couple of instances. There was a change order item that she got involved in. That was, I think, energy program with the utility company. So small things on the edges, but no, is she day to day going to take over that particular project in the current form? No, we have a lot of work to do, and you're right. 3 right now is if you were to take everything everywhere, you know, is probably, it wouldn't be, right? But we are trying to have her main workload and put visibility on projects like that. We have suggested, I believe, with the first suggestion is the Board of Ed does have significant projects at times, fields and other things that are multi-million dollar projects each year, and they manage those aspects. We would like to, and the town, bonded funds towards those. We certainly would like to lend some expertise there, or make sure that they stay on time, on budget, and be a resource. We are working diligently to, as possible, partner with the Board of Education on those types of things and some other things. And we believe in the end that that will end up providing some synergy and ultimately some cost savings back to the town. So you're gonna have some things that are minor, and you're gonna have some things that are.
Madam Chairwoman, getting to your point, we're not gonna be saving this 5%. Because we're gonna still have the project manager.
Oh, I think I think we'll save money because
5% on many projects.
We're gonna-
not all projects.
and let me just, one,
Who's paying the project manager? Who's gonna be the project manager to these?
We're gonna have a lot of projects where our project.
Jim, let me clarify. One, I think we can probably manage some projects internally.
We will
Two,
definitely manage.
speaking as someone who has been a consultant and who has managed a consultant, when projects go over and when projects fail, it's because they get outsourced to consultants and project managers without adequate oversight from the management team. That's a dangerous thing to do. And, you know, I would just point to what's happening at Penfield Pavilion as an example of how things should be managed. I mean, Eli's obviously done a great job. You know, this thing is coming in, I think, ahead of schedule, on budget. You mentioned the issue with the digester. You mentioned the other issue where we're now able to do some inspections.
Yeah, I mean,
Provide some inspections.
that's an example.
Those are all examples of where
That you would pay for.
properly managing our providers is gonna pay off. I mean, and I do think that we've had a real issue there. I mean, and you know, will we be able to manage every project internally? I don't think so. I don't think we have the expertise or the capacity, and we don't want to do that because there's going to be things that shift up and down. But to be overseeing these projects more diligently, considering you know, how much money is here, I think is crucial. That's my opinion. So
We're gonna need a big write-up about this. It's unclear exactly what size projects are gonna be project managers on versus not being project managers on. I mean, because that means every single project, we're gonna have full discussions. Is the project management group gonna be the project manager on this job? Or do we need to budget it? And so to create this group, we're gonna need to see org charts. I hope you understand this. Because just doing something in the first selectman's office in 2019, we got all sorts of org charts. We had numbers run. There was all sorts of stuff. I understand you're just talking about this tonight, but the way it was talked about tonight, it sounds like this group is already up and running and working. And that's my problem, is that it's not my opinion, it's not meet the requirements and it's a breach of the charter. But when you come back to us, we're gonna be expecting this information. I don't wanna have to blow this off for another meeting because you don't have stuff. This is gonna have to be a full, like.
we will
Reached
have a
out.
discussion in the budget. And you need, so it's the RTM's responsibility to approve this, right? Not this body. We ultimately would have the responsibility to approve a transfer of dollars. Right, depending on the timing. And we would also have the responsibility to approve the budget if this reorganization is affected in the budget. So, like I said, next steps. Presentation to the RTM. As necessary, you're gonna double check with the town attorney. Budget transfers, if necessary, before year end from this body or whenever they happen. And this is basically a preview of what's expected during the budget, which I think is good. Because budget meetings are gonna be tough enough, so I'm personally glad to hear about some of this now.
Madam Chairman, I just expect you to talk with the budget committee. Nights where this is, whatever department's gonna be affected. These meetings are gonna be, we're entitled to ask questions about.
We are absolutely entitled to ask
I
questions.
would expect those meetings to go a little longer, putting together what the schedule is. I would leave time. I don't want people complaining that it's 11 o'clock and it's like, we just got this presented to us.
I'm happy to do that. Listen, whatever goes to the RTM, we can have that presentation in advance of or as a separate element of the budget process as well. So. or a special meeting, yeah.
I just want to respond to something you said. I think that you had said about the 100 emails that we got as a result of the message sent out from the head of the RTC. Nowhere in that message does it allude or state that the administration is hiring out of control or hiring heads.
Pete, it referred to charter violations and hiring on budget.
To it, but it does not refer to heads being hired or hiring out of control. Doesn't say anything along the lines of that. It's raising exactly what we've been talking about for the last hour. It doesn't say anything about the heads being hired. It just mentions that there is a new department and positions have been created outside the budget guidelines.
Budgeted positions, yeah. Okay.
That's all it says.
And
And I want to state for the record, it does not state that. And we did get 100 emails. We all got them.
Yeah.
And we haven't addressed.
What I believe the public has been led to believe, because it was what is also out there is that somehow this is resulting in spending over budget. And, you know, that we should all brace ourselves for overspending over the budget because all these unbudgeted positions have been hired. So regardless of how it was sent, that's the concern I hear. And I have written back to and communicated with a number of residents. So for me, I was concerned about that as well. I mean, we should not be hiring above and beyond and making, I mean, we can't legally do that. We have to stay within the budget appropriations. So for me, that's an important element of it. I hear what you're saying.
I just wanted to address that. And I think that, first of all, some of the things raised, obviously bringing the, you know, with Tom joining, there was some of their points raised.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be great. And then, you know, to what Mr. Stark said earlier, you know, I think personally, you know, any manager or leader has the opportunity and should have the opportunity to set up a group. I think I've been, obviously, as you mentioned, when you brought up the grant person, I mean, I'm one that would be all for that. So I'm not questioning that. And I think having people working together and sitting together is actually a very good thing and collaborative. But obviously I would just bring it to the RTM as it says, and then I don't think there's a question. I mean, to me, it seems to be something that if you see value in and the way you presented it with talking about how they can work together, I mean, I think there certainly is value, but I think they are sitting together. And there is certainly perception that this is kind of an up and running group. I don't know that any of us can say in good faith that there's not a perception that this is a new group. I don't disagree that it makes a lot of sense, and I see that they're being paid out of the current budget, like where they were, but it does look and feel like a new group. I think that was the question, but I'm not saying I disagree with the new group.
No, all of that is
I'm
absolutely.
just saying that it's, you know, I can
It's
see how this is being spun in that way because it looks.
I think there were concerns raised, and I just want to make sure that it's clear that what we're talking about is a process concern and making sure that we're adhering to the charter and how we're doing things versus we've got some out of control spending with hiring unbudgeted positions. It sounds like.
Yeah, and I didn't take it that way. I took the fear of when we had our capital projects meeting and went through the capital projects. Clearly, we all were walking away scared that there's some big needs of the town. I thought that was more the issue. I didn't see this as, I mean, you clearly stated, we're actually down a half head when we net it out. So I didn't see it or feel that way. I think you were pretty clear on the whole.
I didn't know that we were down half a head, so this is all helpful information. Mr. Curley?
I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, of course.
So, you know, I've been in corporate America for 35 years, my whole career. And I can tell you, as organizations turn over, there's a lot of leeway that's given to management to reorganize as they see fit, right? And I think that's what you would refer to, Madam Chair, earlier when you talked about a year ago, you wanted to come back to us with some changes to the organization. And you needed time to figure out what that needed to look like and the whole bit. But I can also share that in 35 years, departments are not necessarily established from ground zero. A lot of times, to your point, Mr. Penley, there are cross-functional groups that are established. They are physically co-located together so they can have synergies and they can work together collaboratively, even though they work with dotted lines to different people. And oftentimes, if that's a successful endeavor, a department is formed and then they move on from there. If it's not working, then it's just kind of people are pushed back to their respective departments. So when I started to hear the update tonight, to me, this felt very familiar. This is what I'm accustomed to seeing all the time. Now, I do agree that everybody needs to make sure that we follow the charter, but there's a process that's outlined, you know, Kevin, you referred to it, the charter 6.1G talks about going through approval for the RTM. So I think there's a process that we can follow. I personally would like to see that followed sooner rather than later, so that by the time we get to the budget, we're not discussing whether this department should be formed or not formed, whether these people should be on this page or that page. But at the end of the day, I think what we're seeing is some synergies here and some changes that hopefully will bring efficiencies and ultimately save town money. Just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Yeah, great point. Yeah, and I'm not sure if we've done this before. I mean, we have in the past, you know, like when we created the Parks Department, for example, right?
Or when,
Yeah, that was created. I mean, we saw it in the budget eventually, but I feel like they had been kind of operating and moving in that direction. And then, you know, they needed to figure out how things were going to work and what the numbers were. So they had some comparatives, and then it was like set forth in the budget. So we, you know.
Talking about moving the WPCA people into parks?
No, when we moved the DPW people into parks. Yeah, I mean,
DPW?
maybe not a perfect comparison, but listen, I think we all agree that it's really important to follow the charter. But I'm trying to stay focused on, you know, I'm not, you know, my opinion or capital planning and projects and management has not been stellar. I'm not worried about making a change to that project, to that process. I'm kind of excited to hear that we've brought in some terrific talent and that we're doing some good things to get a better handle on this. And to the extent that it's cost neutral, that's great. So, you know, I look forward to hearing more about this, and yeah, and we should make certain that we're doing it in the right way. So.
yeah, I mean, I know you're right, it is different, but I do remember, I think I was on the RTM when basically all of fields were lifted out of DPW and put into Parks and Rec. I don't think I voted on that other than through the budget.
Through the budget, yeah.
But, and whether, is that a restructuring? I mean, Parks existed, DPW existed, it's
Facilities budget, that's a self-supporting, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, you know.
This isn't like a radical restructuring, but I want to go through the,
Yeah, and we should make sure we do it right. And so it would be great to just ensure that the town attorney is, you know, has weighed in and that we're following what.
I didn't ask him if I had to do it. I told him I was going to do it, so I could ask him if I have to do it. I haven't.
I mean, I assume you would have raised a red flag, but regardless, I think you should ask. Okay, so that's our okay. And I just want to say, you know, I appreciate the board's concerns and questions. I think that no one's wrong in terms of what they're asking, and we should make sure that we're doing this the right way.
Doesn't the RTM process have to happen? How can we even fund a department that doesn't exist?
We're gonna follow up on that, yeah. So the timing, we'll get back to us. We don't vote on the budget, obviously, until the beginning of April, I believe. And the RTM doesn't vote on the budget until May, so I don't know how well that timing technically works, but. All right. All right, yes. Okay, so thank you for the update. So item 8 is to hear Board of Finance committee updates. So first of all, I just to clarify the committees and who's on the committees, because we talked about this a little last time. So we have 5 committees: audit, budget, fund balance, senior and disabled tax relief, purchasing. You know, again, from my perspective, anyone's welcome to come and participate to these meetings, but we kept the committees at no more than 3 per committee. So purchasing, Mr. Penley, Ms. Leclerc, and Mr. Myers have volunteered for that. I want to thank them for doing that. They're going to work with the purchasing director, and also Penny Saxel will be involved in this process. She's had recommendations over time that we want to make sure are incorporated into any changes that are made in that. So thank you for taking that on. I don't know if you guys have talked about meeting or you have any updates.
Now we need to.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you need to schedule an organizational meeting. Senior and disabled tax relief, that was Mr. Curley, Mr. Penley, and Mr. Myers. So I'm gonna assume you guys haven't met yet either. Okay. That, just to let everyone know, we did have an audit report to the audit committee on some issues with the execution of that program. And I think I forwarded the report to some of you, so that would be a good thing to look at as well as the RTM. Fund balance, we were in the middle of our process. That committee was myself, Mr. Curley, and Ms. Ruggiero. Mr. Walsh has also been participating in all the meetings, and we thank him for that. So we're gonna continue that. We have a meeting Thursday night. Budget committee is Mr. Stark, Ms. Ruggiero, and Mr. Myers. I don't know if you guys have an update. So you guys need to have an organizational meeting. I'm hoping that by our February board meeting at the latest, you can report something back, and you can also have an opportunity to, as a board, to provide feedback on any information we'd like to see. Obviously, we heard tonight, you know, to Jim's point that, you know, one thing that we'll be expecting is information about the organization and the operations department. There was also a cell phone seemed to be a hot topic. I forwarded an audit report to the committee members on that. So anything else would be good for us all to have an opportunity to weigh in on that. And audit committee, me, Mr. Matola, and Ms. Leclerc, and Ms. Ruggiero, you're always welcome to attend as well. We did have a meeting earlier this evening. Mr. Matola, I don't know if you want to give an update on that.
Sure, it's an organizational meeting, but we. Yeah, the town's really, Connie Saxon was really rocking and rolling on the internal audit. She presented 11 of them tonight.
That listed under our, that was, when I tried to call up it was listed under our backup for this
It
meeting.
was wrong.
Yeah.
I
Somebody
found,
made a mistake posting it. I think Jen Carpenter then.
I think she fixed it though. But what's gonna happen
Printed
is,
it all out,
well,
nothing to do with our meeting.
so you should read these. No, they're quick reads, because in our February meeting, Connie's gonna present these to the entire. They're good, and it's exactly what you need an internal auditor to do.
You said there were 11?
It was
11,
actually 15 for the year.
15.
We had 11.
Yeah, 11 tonight were presented. So take a look at them and very satisfied with them, and we have to make sure that the recommendations are followed. And that's it. Thank you.
Yes,
Big internal controls.
yes.
And we have a former controller of a couple large companies now working for us, but we have we set up a monthly internal audit meeting with Caitlin and Connie, David, and Tom and myself. So Connie is very happy to be appreciated. Maybe we should ask her to slow down, but I think I really appreciate the work that she's doing. So
Yeah, Connie, just for the board, I mean, those of you who have been on the board for a while will remember that she was, had previously been asked to be a filler in the accounting department and not been spending all of her time on audits. That has changed. in the past. I think prior to you coming on board, Bill, she sort of transitioned full-time into audit. So she's done a lot of audits. She's doing a great job. There are some items we asked for follow-up on. But I'm glad to hear that you're having a monthly
I
meeting.
think it's just generally sending the message to people that getting written up is not like,
It's not,
just
Yeah.
fix it. It's not like an insult.
fix it, and it's not okay to respond to audit reports by blowing them off, which we've seen some of that in the past too. And so I think having attention from you is really helpful there.
I think what's important is she's gonna start doing some Board of Ed ones.
Yes, that's the other
We
big
have
thing.
started doing it.
Yeah, we asked her to focus on that as well, because let's face it, it's within her purview. It's where the majority of the town's dollars are spent, and we have not, to my knowledge, have had any internal audits on any Board of Ed activity. I don't know if before my tenure it was done, but not.
Yeah, that we'd hire, when I was on the board, outside audit a million years ago. It's been done since then.
So-
Operational audit.
Need an operation.
So Connie has told us that she already completed a payroll audit and she's working on another one at Board of Ed. So obviously they're working together and that's going well. So I think that's a great development. Any questions about committees? Right, yeah, so if,
I'm not on one, so I don't have any questions.
well, you're de facto.
Kind of on
It's all right.
You're a de facto fund balance committee member, and we appreciate.
I have some questions in regards to our body.
Sure.
First is,
Committees or,
the vacancy report was supposed to be presented at the quarterly in November.
yes,
Then the administration did not present it. We got nothing. It was supposed to be presented at the December meeting. The December meeting came, wasn't on our agenda. I expected to see it on tonight, or at least to be discussed. And we still don't have a vacancy report. It's been 3 months.
right.
I want it on. I'm making a request, Charlton, have it be on our February agenda. I want it there.
Okay, February
We've-
quarterly. We'll have it on the February quarterly.
We've gone an entire quarter. I
Okay.
mean, it's BS to be quite honest with you. So.
This is a new item that we're looking at, and so we didn't have it last quarter. Ted, actually, to your point, thought that we would discuss vacancies as part of this organizational update tonight. We don't have the report. Is there any update on vacancies? I mean, we know the big one has been filled because Tom is here, but is there anything of note that's changed since the last vacancy report that you can kind of tell us in advance of next month?
Or being met down because of that. There's obviously now several more vacancies.
So we filled the grant writer, we filled the CFO position. Those were a couple big ones. Any other?
So depends on where you want to place them, but and I see that'll come up when we bring it forward. But yeah, right now, the budget director is being filled by a part-time role, not a full-time role. Right now, the Parks and Rec superintendent role is currently vacant. And
Are we intending to fill that, or are we searching for that?
we're not currently doing a search on that. So that's not necessarily intent. We are discussing as part of the budget process, if there were other adjustments in the budget, if that makes sense to bring it back or not. That's been vacant since April. It's actually functioning fine. That's the department's currently structured. The other ones typically police and fire. I know there were a few that were on there, but they manage those through open. So I think we can include those as formal vacancies, but usually if there's a vacancy, it's covered by overtime and it's in departments. So I believe the intent of that report was more so on the town side. I know it was brought up at the last quarterly, sort of the zero in the churn number, but the town normally has a understood it historically, that the organization, a fair amount of actual vacancies at any given time and a fair amount of savings in that. You know,
Zero. It was reported to us on a formal report that the vacancy number is net zero.
At that point, it was
Zero.
across the organization,
Yeah.
net zero. Yes.
Everything was zero.
Yes.
Although we proved during the meeting that it wasn't.
Well, you proved based on these discussions, you're net half down. So there are, if you were to go into, we believe that they'll ultimately be absorbed within the departments, but again, there's ebbs and flows within the police and fire departments, so.
Okay, so
I
we're.
certainly present several
So
other
we'll
vacancies.
have a report during the quarterly, but is there anything else notable? I mean, I think the big
Nothing else notable.
concerns were the vacant CFO position, the vacant budget director position. We know the status of that. The grant writer, that's in place. And then there's ebbs and flows where we have some normal churn.
And I would note, you're looking at, again, I mean, you're on the first quarter, you're looking at snapshot in time based on that information. So by the February quarterly, as an example, we'll be halfway through the year. That report's gonna look very different, but same this particular year, and I think we brought this up during the budget. It's not just about the vacancy, but this board raised revenue lines and cut expense lines that were already spot on, in all reality. So things are very, very.
So we tried to budget closer so we wouldn't end up with big surpluses, and you're saying that we're tracking closer to budget.
So in Q1, tracking very close in budget, I mean, Caitlin, when she handed me that report, was like, I've never seen this, but are you sure you wanna put, we went back and forth about the zeros, cause we knew it was gonna spark a discussion, but we felt that at Q1, that we were very, very tight. And we believe that by Q2, obviously with more information that things would start to adjust some, but we are very, very tight.
Okay.
In all ways.
Is there a Board of Ed vacancy report? You guys look at that?
I'd like to get one.
Great idea.
Do it. Let's do it. So Chairwoman, could you speak to the Board of Ed?
Yeah.
Board of.
Well, I'd be happy to do it, but here's what I wanna, I wanna stay, the point of, all right, we're gonna stick to our agenda items, and the vacancy report was supposed to be backup for the vacancy number in our quarterly review. It is morphed into something else, which is a discussion about organization, which is why we put that organizational discussion on the agenda tonight. It's really different. So we can have a vacancy report. We can request that from the Board of Ed. They do build some vacancy numbers into their budget, unlike the town. The town always budgets fully. So we'll have that discussion, but, and I'll be glad to request it. In fact, I'll send an email right now asking that they be prepared to bring that in February. And the town can as well, but I do, I do want to say that, again, that's support for the quarterly numbers. If we want to get into a different discussion about organization and the status of all these vacancies, that's a separate agenda item similar to what we did tonight, so.
Well, I would just ask that the Board of Finance stick to it.
Stay in our lane.
Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
So if it's relating to a concern about, paying for things by shortchanging the town, by shortchanging, one area that shouldn't be shortchanged, I get it. But if it's just trying to manage us, it really seems unfair.
No, and I think the discussion tonight about organization was in fact related to the budget. As you can appreciate, we had discussions, there were questions about whether we were hiring unbudgeted positions and all this other stuff. And so, and just in the interest of transparency, things are changing. That was anticipated, but it's good to get an update. All right, so Board of Ed vacancy report as well. Anything else, Jim?
Yeah, follow-up items. I didn't get any email regarding follow-up items from our December meeting that I had. So how are we managing that?
You have one follow-up item I have down, which I'm planning to report on the completion line at the end, but I can do that certainly now. The sustainable check was deposited. The other follow-up items that I had, and I apologize if I'm missing something, by all means, let me know now. But I had questions for two different items related to the SS4A grant. And that has not been produced. You also had something
What about where the
related
money's
to,
coming from?
no, but well, once the grant, once we actually had the entire plan, which may not be for another year. The other was tracking of all the complete streets spending, which we are working on, but very little spending actually is sure at this point. It's just wanted us to start doing reporting on complete street spending because complete streets hasn't actually initiated. We just got the $1 million. We haven't actually been out expending it. So that's.
I think we also said we're tracking that in that capital report that Sabrina does, right? All the actual spending is gonna be in there.
Correct. So there was nothing to report back at the time on that. And then you wanted a master plan presentation and financial plan presentation related to the flood bonding. The contract is just in the process of being, hasn't even been signed yet. It's been awarded but not even been signed. And those are the items I walked away with. Particularly after you had some questions about that, made a specific separate tracking for those and wrote those ones out tied with the items. So if you have other items, then tell me.
Do you have the two items from tonight that I had asked for?
So I have a
We're on the
Parks
same
and Rec
page.
follow-up for the $27,000 and I
Yes.
have the projects follow-up for where when the clock is billing out of some fund that's an both of which we would have an answer for you tomorrow.
And also the only other one was, thought I got agreement from, our foreign art. He was gonna supply the slide regarding apartments.
Yes, I didn't have that as a follow-up directly back, but we typically will post.
Okay.
But we'll post that and I believe I'm gonna distribution month will automatically be one versus the website.
Okay.
So I'll mark that as 3 and make sure that's done.
And then the last item, which we don't really need to discuss, but I would like to get on a future meeting is when we started talking about the payroll process
Mhm.
and that we were gonna go to an outdoor vendor, outside vendor. We were told that it's gonna take a couple months, 2-3 months to get it all under control. We're hiring somebody, we know who that's gonna be, we've been interviewing people, and we come back to you and tell you what that's gonna be. It's been now 9 months since we talked about that. And we've had no update. I'd like to get that on as an agenda item. I don't want to hear about anything tonight. Get it on an agenda item. I want to know where we stand with it. Have we completely transferred over? I want to know where we stand. And you mentioned, Bill, tonight, we can cut somebody out of finance or half the position out of finance because they don't do payroll. So I want to hear about an update on that at a future meeting.
Just to be clear, I didn't say they don't do payroll anymore. Did not say that. I said they're transitioning out of some of their payrolls. So they are still working on that project. That project will be, we're like a part of the way done that project. Still have time and attendance that we're working on, and we're still working through some reconciling. She's still doing part of it. And you know who I'm.
I actually don't know who you're talking about.
Okay. So
I don't know who you're talking, what person up to you're
yeah,
talking?
the person who does payroll is transitioning out of many of her responsibilities into another finance. Payroll.
Job.
So,
Job, right?
right, so,
I thought you were actually talking about, so you said somebody left finance, I thought payroll.
No, a different person left
no,
behind.
a different person, an analyst left
Grades
for
and-
job. But, so, okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. So status of pay common, and that's another thing I assume that we'll see the impacts of that in the upcoming budget as well, right?
I mean, well, you told me, I don't know if you remember this, but we talked about it. I said, I would like to see some type of schematic on how payroll works. They didn't understand it. All the problems. And you're like, yeah, we have that actually together pretty much. We're pretty close on that, on what the whole process is for payroll. I never saw that again. We had that meeting, we never talked about payroll ever again.
Wasn't there, The
We
report,
did it in the fall.
We
There was an
provided the report from Joe Santafanti
Joseph and Finance report.
that had that all laid out.
I mean, I don't, might not.
Okay, I'm happy to forward it. So,
No idea. Yeah, we had an audit of.
yeah, we had, this board approved
Yeah.
money. We had an audit of the payroll process done. There were a myriad of issues that were identified that would, if we were to try to solve them internally, would have required a lot of time, effort, and likely additional resources. The town made the decision to move toward Paycom instead. And that implementation. So it sounds like we've got so Paycom is cutting our checks now,
Becomes cutting the checks.
doing the deductions, but the time and attendance piece is still.
But their time and attendance is gonna require a lot of training of employees. Gonna have to log in and log out, that kind of stuff, so.
So we'll see, we'll try to get an update on that at one of the February meetings, depending on what else is on the agendas, just so everyone knows, the intent was for February, try and get an update on the capital plan. So hopefully we get that because, as you all know, normally this board starts voting on capital projects and bond resolutions in the February and March timeframe prior to the budget. So before we do that, we wanted to see the updated capital plan because the last one we saw had numbers in it that were uncomfortably high. That was the reason for the fund balance committee doing its work. And the end result of all that is going to be to have an updated capital plan. So February is a kind of, I think might be a heavy month. We have Joe Santafanti scheduled for the ACFR. We have, what's his name? Matt Spurndle scheduled to come before us. We have Connie with 15 internal audit reports scheduled to come before us, and we're going to have an updated capital plan. So there is a lot. So with regard to some of these other items, we'll fit them in as best we can between the quarterly and the March date so that we can keep a manageable agenda. All right. Anything else? Communications, David? Anything?
No, that was the one item I was going to, so I covered it.
All right, motion to adjourn. Mr. Curley, Ms. Ruggiero, in favor? Good night, everyone.
I'm so good.